welcome to episode 144 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary, with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club, where we take one book a month and dive into all of the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So, you finished the book?
Yes, sure.
Did you not?
No, I have not. I think I've got like maybe 40 pages left.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Well, just a little spoiler, I guess. Maybe by the time we finish this episode, you'll have finished the book.
Maybe.
If not, I will tell you in excruciating detail what happens, so you have to live through it.
Oh.
So, what did you think this week? Because this is the first time you've read all of this part, really.
So it's not as bad as I thought it was gonna be.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I don't know if I just haven't gotten to because everyone talks about how, like, heartbreaking the ending is. And, like, yeah. I already know at least part of what happens at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, am I desensitized? Like...
Yeah, but... Yeah. Possibly.
You know what I mean?
To
like,
that one thing. Yeah. I get what you're saying.
So, like, maybe I'm not gonna be as, like, scandalized because I already know what the end result is.
Yeah.
And... Sorry, we also have already gotten excerpts from Onyx Storm.
Yeah.
So, like, we sort of already know that, like, Violet and Xaden, like, at it again.
Yeah. I will say, and I'm thinking you're probably not there yet. I didn't cry this read through, but the spot that I almost cried was not where I expected. And I don't know if you've read that yet, but I'll talk about it when we get to it in my part. But there was one spot where I, like, started tearing up, and it was just like, I guess it's probably where I started crying the first time, and the difference with that is the first time I just kept crying till I finished the book.
Ah.
But it wasn't the big thing that made me cry, so I wonder if that'll hit you.
Oh, God. I don't want it to.
That's fair. Sorry. I guess where there's just so much that happens this week, which I know we're broken records, we say it every week.
Yeah.
But I think, like, we should probably just get into it and we can, like, finish up our chat about this book at the end of it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So, just a heads up, this is not a spoiler-free zone and things might get saucy. So this week is our last week with Iron Flame, so we're gonna hit all the woes, all the wows. We are reading chapters 53 to 66 today. So the last week, a whole lot happens, but essentially the Cliff's Notes is that, I guess Kat and her Griffin riders all show up at the school or at Aretia, and they sort of make a new school environment similar to Basgiath, where the Dragon Rider students and the Griffin Flyer students are all educated. They're trying to educate them because they don't want them going out and fighting Venom without that knowledge. So they essentially develop a routine. Violet keeps looking at the journal, trying to find ways to have the wards going. I guess, was it...
They test it once, don't they? They test it once.
They test it once, and it obviously... Nothing happened. But she does sort of make some strides towards figuring it out until she finally does figure it out, but doesn't tell anyone about it, even though she says she is going to tell people about it.
Yes.
She sits on it for a while because she knows that once they get the wards up and running, the Griffin Flyers will not have their ability to channel anymore, and they will be at a disadvantage. So, they also, like, the Venin are slowly sort of moving towards where they are. And Violet and Xaden, like, they have a little bit of rocky times, but for the most part, you know, he just does nothing but tell her how much he loves her and, like, how much he would destroy everything for her and, like, sacrifice everything for her and all this stuff, and it's lovely. And she's just like, but I don't think I'm enough, which is sad. So the Griffin Flyers and Dragon Riders were also combined. We didn't mention that they're now all in one squad together. And we left off last week with they're going on, like, I guess I would call it like a war games sort of a thing, similar to Fourth Wing. They're all out on a mission. The professors put rune boxes, hid them all around the mountains, and they want the dragons to sense them, find them, deactivate them, and I guess bring them back.
Yeah, seems like
to base, and whichever squad finds the most boxes, that is the squad that is going to get, like, a weekend off or something like that.
Like, what do they even do during the weekend?
I don't know.
Are they, like, what, off of what?
I think they could travel.
Oh,
so,
okay.
like, if they want to visit their families or go to a nearby town or something like that, they can.
Okay.
Anyway, so I guess Violet and her squad, they are all set to complete that mission. So, we open with an excerpt from the study on signets. So apparently imbuing only comes naturally to a handful of signets and only automatically to one, the siphon, which I actually found really interesting because Violet is imbuing the wardstone, Dane is imbuing the wardstone, Xaden is imbuing the wardstone. Seems like she's getting everyone to shove a bit of power. It just...
Yeah.
And, like, using those, the balls that, I know.
Sorry. The
conduit. Like, is that not her imbuing into that? It just, like...
It is, yeah.
It seems like it's a common thing, imbuing.
Yeah.
So it's surprising that they're saying only certain people can do it.
It isn't later.
Yeah. So we automatically follow up Kat, Violet, Andarna, Kiralair, who is Kat's Griffin, Sloane, and Vizia are climbing down a mountain, and it's covered in snow. They are trying to, like, reach a cave to search for room boxes. I guess Tairn says he could sense one in there in this cave, but he's too big to go with them to reach it. The only dragon small enough to go with them is Andarna, which is funny because she wasn't supposed to go with them anyway.
Yeah.
But she's there.
Can't stop her.
Yeah. So that's why Kiralair is there, because he's she, I think. She is obviously a griffin, so she's on the small side. Sloane and Vizia's dragons are not there. So Violet and Andarna are, like, having this silent conversation, essentially making fun of Kat, and, like, so, like, I guess the word cocky or, like, confident gets thrown around, but Andarna's like, she's not confident, she's arrogant, because she can't back up what she says. And, like, Violet tells Kat that that's what Andarna is saying. Because they're just, like, she's, like, giggling and looking at Andarna, and Kat's like, what are you guys doing? And she's like, oh, Andarna thinks you're arrogant. And I'm just
We're talking about you.
Like, just tell us how you really feel.
Yeah.
So like Sloane, I guess, is giggling at that, and then Kat tries to come for her, and is like, just because your brother hated me, like, doesn't mean you know me or anything like that. And Violet just tells her, like, you, like, direct everything at me. You leave her out of it. And Kat's just like, the only reason you're doing that is because you feel guilty about Liam. And Violet's like, no, it's because I promised Liam I would look out for Sloane. And I'm like, that's not better.
That's the same thing, really.
Yeah, like, that's...
You agreed to it because he was dying.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, it doesn't make you saying, like, point all your hatred at me because I told my dead friend I would watch his sister. Like, that doesn't make anything that you're doing better.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, to be fair, all she's doing is throwing a little shade.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like she's attacking her with daggers or anything like that. She's just, like, giving her a little bit of hazing. And, like, what she says is actually accurate. Like,
100%,
Liam didn't like her, so she's like, just because Liam didn't like me doesn't mean you know me. And it's like, that is so true.
Exactly.
Kat really makes a 180 in this section. So, like, they worked really hard. I think the last section last week worked really hard to make us despise her.
Mm-hmm.
And then this week works really hard to make up for it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Sloane actually admits and's like, Liam should not have asked you to do that. So, like, she acknowledges that Liam should not have asked Violet to carry that burden.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's like, you're already carrying Xaden's life as a burden, and you shouldn't have to worry about her as well. And, like, I guess I never thought of Xaden's life as a burden to Violet, if you know what I mean. Like, I understand that she has to worry about him dying all the time because his death could trigger Scale's death, could trigger Tairn's death, could trigger her death, and Andarna's death. So, like, I understand why they're saying his life is a burden to her. But I
feel like she cares more about the opposite way. She cares about if she dies, she's killing him because he's more important and he's everything.
Yeah.
So...
And, like, to me, she cares more about his life because she loves him. Like, his life is not a burden, as in, if he dies, it'll trigger, like, my dragon's deaths. Because, again, she doesn't care about her own deaths, but she does care about his death and her dragon's deaths. But, like, I don't know, just, like, I would have never thought she would think to say, oh, yeah, his life is a burden.
Yeah, especially since she is also, like, one of the marked kids who have all been, like, annoyed that, like, Violet is around. Because if she gets killed, he gets killed. Like, they're all kind of, like...
Yeah,
I don't know.
They think
Xaden
her
even
life
said
is
it
a
last
burden.
week. Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, so they make their way into the cave. And Vizia actually, like, slips, and Violet manages to, like, grab her and drag her into the cave before she falls down the cave. And, of course, Kat makes some sort of, like, snarky comment of, like, yeah, sure, you'll make sure you save her. But it makes, like, a hole, it collapses the path a bit. To that, so, like, their exit is just a little bit more difficult now. So it's really dark in the cave. Obviously, it's a cave. And none of them can conjure a mage light, which apparently is simple magic, but apparently none of them are any good at it. And, well, and I guess Vizia and, Sloane have not, manifested yet, so they can't do it either. So Kat is just like, oh, of course, I gotta deal with that. I gotta do everything. So, like, digs out this wooden torch and then searches for a fire rune. She's like, where is that fire rune that Marin made me? And Violet is shocked. She was like, Marin made you a fire rune? And Kat is just like, of course she did. Like, essentially, whoever is good at doing something is gonna do it and then shares. Like, they all trade.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and Kat is, like, snarky about it, because she's like, whoever is the best at it makes them for the whole drift. And she's like, she's surprised the riders don't do the same thing, considering you guys consider yourselves, like, a really close, like, you know, squads or families. But they all sort of put themselves first. If I do something, that's mine. That's not yours. So she sort of calls them out, and, like, valid.
Yeah.
So she can't find the rune. So Violet gets her conduit out, and they light the torch by, like, she streams her power into the conduit and gives the conduit for Sloane to hold, streams her power into it, and has Kat put the torch in the stream, and it lights the torch on fire. So they have light. And Kat finally, like, compliments her and just tells her that, like, she really despises and is envious that Violet is so powerful and has so much control. And we're all like, control? Like, she's only been working for, like, 6 weeks at this control thing. That's not incredible.
No, she doesn't have control. So...
yeah, but it's fine. So, it's just, like, a moment for them. Like, they have a moment where where Violet and Kat, like, sort of have a little bit of a reconciliation moment. So, on the topic of signets, because they're talking about power, Vizia asks Violet if she thinks she'll get a second signet. And Violet's like, because, you know, she has 2 dragons. And she's like, I honestly don't know. I haven't thought about it. And Sloane reveals that you get a second signet if your dragon bonds you, who also bonded a direct member of your family.
Yes. Which I brought this up to you.
You did.
I think last week. And it hadn't happened yet.
No, it's happening now.
It is, yes.
So, anyway, so she said, like, if that's why it's dangerous, because you could get a second signet, but you could also go mad with power. And then she says, like, for example, Quinn, who is Imogen's, like, bestie. Quinn's great aunt's dragon bonded Quinn, but the only thing that happened to her is she's just slightly more powerful. Because it's her great aunt. It's not like her mom or dad or her grandparent or great grandparent. It's not someone in her direct line.
Yeah.
Violet has a realization here. And she isn't okay, but she also doesn't tell us what the realization is. She just...
But we can put it together.
We could put it together if you're paying attention. Yeah. But we'll go over it.
One of the letters earlier explains it.
Right, yes. So, they find the box, and Andarna mentions that she can smell other dragons coming. So...
That's not good.
No, it's not great. But they just think it's other squads coming for the box. So they're like, let's grab the box and let's get out of here. So as they're running, Vizia's like, we gotta get that pass. I really want to fly back to Navarre and convince my family to leave the border. Because I guess they live in a border town. And she wants them to get more, move more central. So they're all running. And all of a sudden, Vizia is swat with dragon claws toward the cave walls and is just killed.
Wild.
It was very fast.
Yeah.
And, like, I guess Vizia and Kat were actually, like, running the same, like, they were both in the sort of the same area. But Violet had managed to grab, I guess Violet saw it in the second before it happened. So, like, I'm wondering, could this be Violet's second signet? Like, maybe she can, like, sort of see what's about to happen in, like, a split second before it does. Because she always manages to, like, see the dragons about to blow the breath like bro the fire.
Yeah.
She always manages to grab somebody before something happens. Like, I wonder if that could be something.
That's really smart.
Because...
And I didn't really, like the beginning, when she's like, everybody down, and like almost everybody died in Fourth Wing.
And like, I don't see how she is so much more observant than people that have been around dragons a lot longer.
Yeah, that's an interesting... See, it's so hard, because we're all looking out for that fucking second signet now, and there's so many options.
Yeah, because she said that we've seen it in this book.
Yeah. So we're all going to be looking at it until January.
Yeah. So, anyway. So, yeah. So, that's an option. So, Violet had managed to grab... She, like, tried to grab, I think, both of their backpacks, but only managed to grab Kat's and pull her back so that she's out of the way. So, she saved her life. But it was instinct. Like, she also tried to grab Vizia, but just didn't manage it.
Yeah.
Also, spoiler alert, it's not other squads. It's, Solus.
Which is hilarious, because I was like, I can't believe you don't remember what happens with him.
Yeah.
Because you didn't
read it. So Solus is, Vice Commandant Varish's dragon, the orange one, that has only, like, one eye. And Violet is, like, screaming in her head at Tairn that, like, Solus found them. And then we get an excerpt from the Field Guide to Dragonkind. And all it is dragon fire kills very quickly.
We already knew that, but I do love it.
Yeah. So, something, like, sweeps Kat and Violet away from Solus. We don't really know what it is yet. And Violet is thinking that, like, Kat has to survive because she is third in line for the throne. And Corden, like, the province, the kingdom, would absolutely hunt Xaden down if Kat died. And she wants to protect Xaden. So, like, it's nothing about Kat being a human being.
Yeah.
It's literally... If she dies, then Xaden will get punished.
Yeah. Which is probably true.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying, like, I want her to survive because she's a human is also an appropriate answer.
Yeah, but she's been a huge bitch.
I know.
And Violet almost killed her herself last week, the week before.
Yeah, okay.
But still, yeah, I know what you're saying.
So she also wants to protect Andarna. So she's, like, yelling in her head to survive. She's just like, survive, survive, survive. And it's mainly for Tairn to, like, hear how they're doing, I guess.
Not good.
And she also has no idea how he's going to save them because he can't get in the cave. But I guess she's hoping that he flies around and finds the cave entrance that Solus used, because Solus is huge. He's in there, so there must be something.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, Sloane and Kiralair, the griffin, are next to them, and Andarna yells at Violet to hold her breath. And then Violet yells at everybody else, hold your breath, just before Solus breathes fire at them. But Andarna is using her body to protect them, and she's fireproof, so it's fine.
Yeah.
So if they breathe, like Violet's thinking, oh, this is why she said hold our breath, because if I breathe, the heat will scorch my lungs. So after he, like, does that, Andarna goes to try and, like, fight Solus, so she goes for his throat, but he, like, bats her away. She's only little.
Yeah.
And Kat and Sloane are trying to help pluck some feathers of Kiralair's that caught on fire. And then Violet hears Kat yelling at Sloane to let go because she's draining her magic. So I guess I can't remember if it's made clear to us. Like, it was clear to me that, oh, this
Mm-hmm.
is Sloane manifesting and she's a siphon.
Yeah.
I say manifesting.
And especially since we had that beginning of this week, that signet
Yeah.
about siphons.
Yeah.
But it's not clear to Sloane what's happening.
No.
I think Violet knew, maybe. But I can't remember.
Yeah. So, anyway, so she's just saying, like, let me go. And Tairn just yells at Violet in her head to take out Solas's other eye.
Mm-hmm.
So she throws her dagger at him and hits his eye on the second try. So she's blinded him now. Then she yells at Kat and Kirillere to get Sloane out of there. So they do. I guess they're on the entrance side of the cave. So Tairn is like close by and Solas is just like swiping blindly. And Violet falls to the ground and breaks her conduit and realizes, I need to use my power.
Of course.
And we're just like, no duh. Like, girl. What? Like, really? And I guess she broke the conduit and it has these like weird prong things inside of it. So she tells Andarna to run as soon as it gets dark. I'm assuming like without Kat's torch. I don't understand this instruction to run as soon as it gets dark because the torch is there.
Yeah.
And it is still on fire. So like, is she planning on putting it out?
I guess so.
I don't know. It was a little bit confusing, that part, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, so she decides she's gonna stab Solas with the prong thing inside of her conduit. And then she sees Kat at the entrance who is firing arrows at Solas. Like, she stuck around to try and, like, help save her life, which is nice. Like, way to go.
Yeah.
Good for you. So she runs for a spot in Solas's leg where there's space between the scales. And Andarna bites his shoulder to, like, distract him. And then Violet stabs him with the prongs before backing up. And then she pours her power into the conduit. And, like, Solas hits her with his tail, and he's, like, thrashing around because he's being lightninged. And then she flies back and hits her head against the cave wall, but, like, for some reason it doesn't knock her out, and she manages to keep control.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. Because she knows she needs to protect Andarna, and, like, losing control could mean that Andarna gets lightninged, too.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate. So Solas is like banging Andarna into the wall, try and get her to let go. And Violet wants to save her so that she doesn't die, but like she hit her head real hard and she's on the struggle bus. And then she feels someone grab her and starts hauling her away, and she sees Liam, but hears someone else talking and realizes that it's actually Sloane and Kat. And Sloane is the one pulling her out of the cave, and she thought she saw Liam, but it was just Sloane.
Mm-hmm.
And Tairn is there, and, like, she's fighting to get back to Andarna, and her power is being drained by Sloane. So, like, essentially she poured all of this power into, she poured, like, all of this power to try and kill Solas, and, like, it didn't quite work.
Yeah.
So they're like waiting essentially to see what the outcome is going to be, and they hear a dragon cry, and then it goes quiet, and Violet is like freaking out that Andarna is dead, but Tairn like reassures her like, no, trust me, like Andarna's alive. And then Sloane starts freaking out because she was draining Violet and she's worried she's turning venom. But Tairn's like, no, she's just like Nowlin. I thought Nowlin was a healer or a mender.
I don't know. Because he's the one that died trying to heal Brennan.
Yeah.
Wasn't he? So, like, I thought so too, but I guess, I don't know. There's something going on there. We don't know what it is.
Yeah. So, anyway, just Violet tells Sloane, like, you're okay. You just manifested your signet. You're a siphon. Congratulations. And I'm not gonna lie, if I was told I was a siphon, I'd be pretty pissed. Like,
Yeah.
I'd be pretty annoyed that that's the power I got.
Yeah. Especially there's so many cool ones that we saw, especially this book. Yeah, I'd be annoyed too.
Anyway.
I guess I don't really understand everything with it.
No, I guess not.
Like, what is the point? How is it different than what the Venin are doing? Like, I guess I don't really know anything about it.
We don't know anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Andarna comes out. Andarna killed Solus. And Tairn nicknames her Slayer. I also love it, but, like, later on, like, Tairn mentions that it's actually really bad for dragon to kill each other. And I'm like, so was Slayer, like, not a good thing? Was that, like, a dig? But
I think he was just trying to be like,
way to go, Slayer! Like,
yeah, way to go, champ. Sorry you're now traumatized for life, but we need to move past it at just this second.
Yeah. Anyway, so later, Violet is in her and Xaden's room being seen by a healer. When Xaden, like, storms in. And Kat is, like, also there. And Xaden's like, why are you here? And Kat's like, well, she saved my life, so I thought I would make sure she at least saw a healer who was also there. And then she's like, okay, peace out, bye. And Kat just leaves. And it's just comical because, like, Violet starts sort of explaining everything to Xaden. And he's like, I know what happened. Scale told me. And she was like, you were in an assembly meeting. I didn't want to bother you. And he's just like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
So he lets it all come out, or she lets it all come out, sorry, that the only reason she saved Kat was to protect him because he would be punished by Tekaris or whatever his name is, if Kat died. And, like, he is just baffled by all of this. Because he's like, all I want is you. And all I want is to protect you. But you keep putting yourself in danger for what you think is, like, the good of me. And, like, the good of everything.
Yeah.
And she just makes a snarky comment then. So, like, she's actually fine. The healer, like, checked her out. She's got a bump on her head, but that's about it. So, like, she's fine.
Yeah.
So, like, she makes a snarky comment then about how, like, does he want to keep her safe or does he just not want to kill her? And that sort of is, like, a dig at the deal he made with her mom.
Which I can't believe hasn't been brought up yet. Which is this whole section is that, I know, but still.
So, like, it's sort of annoying because then he, like, asks, like, are you finally ready to ask me about this yet? And this has been a running theme of how she keeps thinking about it, but she's like, no, I love him, I trust him, like, I don't think that he has only been in it because of that. Right? So then we get an excerpt from the Journal of Warwick of Lucerys. Did you have a butt?
Oh, no. We'll get into it in a second anyway. Okay. It's fine.
So nothing kills love faster than opposing ideologies.
Which is so on point for the world at the moment.
Yes! It is on point for the world.
But yes.
Anyway, so obviously Xaden is really pissed. And he wanted her to ask him about it. But, like, she's pissed because she's like, I don't know what you're going to answer honestly or what you're going to evade. And, like, I don't like either of their arguments for this.
Yeah.
Because on one hand, I don't like her saying, well, I don't know what you're going to answer and what you're going to evade. But, like, I don't remember him being evasive at all this book. He's really been trying, when she asks a question, to answer it honestly.
Yeah, and he did say that he's not going to tell her everything, but he would just probably say, like, he wouldn't lie. I think he would just not, he'd be like, I'm not telling you that, or something
Or
like
I can't
that. Like,
tell
I don't
you
think,
that.
yeah. And I don't think that has, like, not in this situation. But I think it's so fucking stupid that he's like, you need to ask me.
Well,
like,
this is
if
the other
you want
thing.
her trust and you want to get her back, like, you have to volunteer some shit too. Like, it's bullshit.
Yeah, so this is sort of the other thing. Is I don't like this either, that her having to ask him. Like, why does she need to ask the question for you to tell her something about yourself?
Yeah.
Like, if something comes up, then just talk about it. Why does she have to ask you a question? Yeah. And to be fair, they are fighting, and she literally does ask him that. But he just sort of argues that he doesn't want to tell her about the scars or the deal because she would take the blame for them. So, I don't know how we feel about
because
that.
It's her mother. But he knew that she knew. So it's like, obviously she's stewing on this, just like she was stewing on the cat stuff. Like, you know that she's gonna do that, partially, I think, because she has an analytical mind and she wants to work it out herself. So, like, he should know better about who she is as a person and bring shit up sometimes.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Like, she was actually very shocked that he knew that she knew. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But even still, like, he knew that she would sort of assume fault, and he really didn't want her to do that.
So let's leave her wondering about your entire relationship instead. Yeah.
But, like, I do agree with him to a point. Like, if you're stewing about something, you should ask about it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just that thing. Like, if you're mad about something, tell the person. They can't read your mind. Now, hang on.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, but some people need to take some time first. So, like, I kind of understand where they're both coming from. I think she should have brought it up before now, but I think he could have also brought it up before now.
Yeah.
Like, they're both kind of stewing on the same thing, and neither one of them wants to bring it up.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, you're right. But he just tells her, like, he needs her to demand the truth and ask questions without being afraid of the answers, the way that she would have last year. Like, last year, before she found out about the huge secrets he was keeping, she was very demanding. And now it seems like she's gotten a little bit more timid in what she'll demand answers about, because she's afraid, like, about what the answers will be. Mm-hmm. And then she tells him that she feels like she's in love with him. Like, or she's like, I'm in love with you, but I also feel like I barely know you sometimes. And I feel like we've been having the same argument for 5 months. And they have. Has it actually been 5 months since
wrestling? I guess so, because, like, they were at school for a very fucking long time.
That's true. But then he just tells her, he's like, I don't regret making the deal with your mom, because he was like, look at all the good that it did. He was like, we could steal the weapons, but, like, he said it also made, which I hate it so much. He says it made him keep her alive long enough to fall in love with her. So, like, essentially, if that deal didn't exist, he would have essentially killed her on parapet out of revenge.
Or taken her as a hostage, just like the people said that they thought, like, they would bring her to, I guess, outside to the Griffin Riders and shit.
Yeah. So, like, he said he was grateful for that deal because it gave him time to fall in love with her. And I'm like, I don't know if that's good. Like, I don't know if I would take that as a, oh.
I hate it as a romance reader.
Yeah.
and a lover of Fourth Wing.
Yes.
By fourth I mean the first book.
Yeah.
Book number uno.
It's true. It's ruining all those moments for us.
Yeah.
They spend like almost 2 pages of the book doing a weird what's in the armoire analogy that I'm not going to get into. But the result is that Violet, like, they just come to the conclusion that Violet doesn't ask him questions, not because she doesn't trust him, because again, she keeps saying, especially about the deal with her mother, the reason she didn't ask is because she trusted him. She knows he loves her. So, like, she was like, I didn't want to bring it up. But the reason she doesn't ask the questions is because she's afraid the answer is that, like, is going to be some sort of deficiency with her.
Yeah.
So, that's why she doesn't ask. Same thing, like, she didn't ask about Cat. She didn't want to talk about Cat. Because she was afraid that bringing Cat up would make him realize, oh yeah, she probably is better for me. Peace out.
Yeah.
So, she does admit that she didn't ask about the deal because she was worried that, like, all of their moments last year that had her falling for him were not the same for him. That they were just because
Which
of
is
the deal.
what we don't
Which
like.
is also, it's true. It's exactly what we hate.
Yeah.
And she just says, like, she's so in love with him, she doesn't even know what side of the line she's on between obsession and devotion. So she's like, I could just be obsessed with you. That's not healthy, but that's how much in love with you I am. Which I actually really like.
I appreciate that she recognizes that in herself.
Yeah. And, like, I was like, I wanted a declaration, and I'm getting it. It's just, I want him to also declare.
Yeah.
So someone knocks on the door, and they're yelling to go away! And Xaden...
But it's all, like, it's all soundproofed anyway, so no one can hear them.
Oh, yeah. That's true. I forgot about that. So Xaden challenges her to a question. Or he just says, ask a question. So she's like, all right, fine, I will. What is your second signet? And that's what she realized back in the cave when they were talking about second signets. She realized, like, he must have one because Scale bonded his grandfather before bonding him. Mm-hmm. So you either get a second signet or you go mad. And he's not mad. Ergo, he must have a second signet.
Yeah.
So he's, like, shocked at that question. And he doesn't answer it. But, and she's like, oh, yeah, of course. I knew this was going to happen. I ask you a question. It's not one you want to hear, so you're not going to answer it. And starts, like, going on her little rant. But then somebody is, like, still knocking. And Xaden's like, go away. And it opens the door, but it's Brennan. And he's like, bad news. There's a wave of wyverns headed our way. And, like, Violet, you should probably raise the wards. So, like, they have to, like, pause their entire argument.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. We're like, but what is it?
So, it's the Journal of Warwick again. He says, it was never our continent. It was theirs. And we're just allowed to live there. So, we don't really know if he's talking about dragons or something else.
I assume dragons,
too.
But I guess, who knows?
So they head to the Wardstone, and Violet's like, well, at least all the imbuing they've done, it's holding power. So after they raise the wards, her and Xaden have decided that they're going to meet the Horde head on, while the rest of the second and third years head for the Navarian border. So, like, she's sort of stressed in her head that she got the translation wrong, because this is going to protect all of Aretia. And she explains some of the translations to Brennan and, like, how she interpreted it. And it turns out they need a representative of each dragon line. And once a dragon helps create a ward, they cannot do so again. So, of course, Rhiannon is there because her dragon represents a different house. And, like, Brennan is really impressed and tells her that their dad would be really proud of her. Dane is also there with his dragon, like a fucking course. Suri is there, and I don't even know who that fucking is. Like, in all fairness.
She's part of the...
Assembly?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
She might have been mentioned fucking one time.
Yeah.
So Violet asks Tairn after Andarna. And like they sort of talk about what I mentioned before. It's a great offense for one dragon to kill another, and it like leaves a mark on your soul. And she had to sort of be questioned by the elders, and they did find her actions justifiable, but he just said like this is gonna weigh on her really heavily.
I guess that's gonna happen in the next book, because it doesn't weigh on her heavily in this
nope,
book.
It does seem like. Not. And like the thing that bothers me is, and we're gonna struggle a little bit with the wards in a minute, but like the 6 and the 1 is really stuck in my head.
Yeah, of course it is, because it's important.
Is that solved at the end of this book? Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. So like none of that is sort of brought up here. So they blow fire into the wardstone, and Violet does feel this like pulsing magic, and it does remind her of Navarre how it feels. But the stone doesn't look any different. So they can't really be sure it worked, and they don't really have time to test it. So Xaden and Violet and their dragons take up a post on the edge of a cliff, and sort of Xaden's like, well, there's no one here. Might as well talk.
Yeah.
And she just sort of reveals, like, they have, like, I guess it's a heart-to-heart. And she feels like she doesn't always know him. And she's like, if I don't know you, how can I love you? Which is weird, because she's like, I love you so much, I'm obsessed with you. And then it's like, how do I know, like, how do I love you if I don't know who you are? And I'm like, you literally just said you were obsessed with him. So, you know, I think she's being a little bit contradictory here to herself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He then, like, this moment is heartbreaking, because then he asks how long it would take for someone to fall out of love. Because he's like, if I answer this question, you will fall out of love with me, like, in a flat second. So she just, like, plays a guessing game. She starts guessing and eliminating signets, because she was like, signets manifest based on who you are and what you need. And so she keeps, like, saying, well, you don't need this, you don't need that, you know, and all this stuff. So, like, she's saying it all out loud, and he just begs her to stop and reveals that, like, not one single person knows this information.
Yeah.
And she finally puts it together that he is a person that needs control and information. And she sort of guesses that he's a sort of intrinsic. And he does admit, like, he cannot read thoughts, but he can read intentions. And he admits that that's why he let her live after eavesdropping in the tree in Fourth Wing. And I hate that!
Me too.
And it's also why he let Dane come with them to Aretia anyway. Because he got the intention that he really didn't want to do them any harm.
Which is fine. I'm okay with that.
Me too. And, like, she feels very betrayed. And Tairn does too. Because Scale never told him about it. Because to speak it would mean certain death. And I'm like, it just is like, I don't understand why Scale couldn't have told Tairn. I think that's a little bit like, maybe it's not her business to tell him, but like, who the fuck is Tairn gonna tell?
Well, yeah. Like, obviously, I guess maybe he would tell the elders and then they'd have to kill him. Maybe they don't. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know.
I feel like he wouldn't do that.
No.
But, yeah.
Anyway, so she starts to worry now that maybe, like, everything that he has done has been a trick, and that maybe he's only been saying what he knows is the right thing to get her to love him, and, like, he's heartbroken because he can see all over her face. He was like, it took you a minute to fall out of love with me. Like, that's how long it took.
Which I'm like, fuck off.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't mean she doesn't love you. She's allowed to process information. Yeah. I get it, and it is heartbreaking, and it's a scene, and blah, 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 but I'm also like, she needs a fucking minute.
And, like, she thinks in her head that, like, she does still love him, but she's not sure how many more blows their love can take. And I'm just like, oh, sweetie. Yeah. But she does tell him that she was like, hey, my love isn't fickle, which I actually really appreciate. And she was like, but you have to survive today because I have questions.
Of course.
And of course she has questions. So they look up and they see a swarm cloud of wyverns coming their way. So they take off, like they get on their dragons and sort of fly and hover above the cliff, like up near where the wards would be, which I don't understand how they know how far the wards
you
go.
can feel them.
I guess.
Like, I don't know.
So they watch the horde approach, and there are 17 venin, including the sage from Resin. And nope. And like obviously, like against the two of them, they're dead.
Yeah.
So Xaden tells her that he loves her, and that if she believes nothing else, believe that. She doesn't say anything back. So they watch the wards, and a wyvern crosses it, and they're worried that the wards didn't work, but then the wyvern suddenly dies.
Yay.
And then another one also tries, and then that one dies. So, like, the sage is pissed. But they then gather up all the wyverns, and they just fly away. It's actually, like, it's really anticlimactic.
Yeah.
So, they all get back sort of together, and they all celebrate. Yay, the wards are working. But Xaden and Violet are needed in the assembly room. So they go there, and Mira and Serena are there. Serena is Kat's sister, and a griffin flyer. So they are there to tell them that General Melgren has asked for a meeting tomorrow with whoever represents their rebellion, plus Mira and Violet, and that their party can include no more than 2 marked ones, because remember, he needs to be able to get the outcome of events, so he doesn't want marked ones clouding up everything.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, P.S., Violet, your mom's gonna be there. So that'll be a fun reunion.
Yeah.
No one thinks that they should go. Everyone's like, screw them, let's not even bother. Serena, though, is like, also, I have some other bad news. So she holds up her dagger and lets it hover. So it's lesser magic. But it means that she's still able to channel under the wards, which means there's something wrong with the wards.
Yeah.
Which I don't really get, because I just don't. Like, I don't...
Well, the Navir wards were such that Griffin riders couldn't...
Yeah, but why?
Because that was the point of them, like, to keep the Griffins out, as well as the venin, but it was also to keep the Griffins and the Griffin riders out, the flyers.
I guess.
But that's what happened at the end of last week, is she was like, if we put up the wards, you're gonna lose your magic.
Yes. But, anyway. So, they put up the wards and they didn't lose their magic.
Yeah.
So, the next, I guess, excerpt is from the unedited history of Navarre. The day that General Melgren manifested his signet changed the way that Navarre does warfare forever. So, like, he's significant.
Makes sense.
So, for some reason, even though everybody is saying, no, don't meet Melgren, they're like, we're gonna do it! We're gonna meet him! And they actually agree to meet at Athabine, which is iconic, I guess. Yeah. They're like, look, this is where we sent you to die.
Yeah, it's a stupid spot to meet.
Yeah.
Really. Let's put them in the best headspace.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so obviously we're in Violet's head, and she's like made the decision that they're not walking, she isn't walking away from Xaden. Like, she loves him, but after sort of the meeting, like, after they went to the assembly and they were like, look, the wards aren't right, she was like, well, I better go to the library and research right away. Yeah. So, essentially, she was researching all night, and it's sort of like unfortunate because so she was there, and then Dane was there, and like I'm pretty sure some of her friends were there too. So like, anyway.
Yeah, it's like, why didn't you just have a conversation with him? But
Yeah.
I'm also like, maybe she used that time to figure shit out.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I'm gonna pretend it's
Yeah, valid.
happening.
So 10 of them went to the meeting. 6 of them are actually going in. 4 of them are hiding in the trees. Tairn and Scale are fighting with each other, and it's really funny because everyone's like, Mom and Dad are fighting.
Yeah.
And Xaden asks Violet why she didn't come to bed. But she's just like, oh, we were just trying to figure out the wards. Like, only Dane and Sawyer and Jesnia. And I'm just like, so essentially you had all of your friends and you left Xaden alone. Like, great. And, like, guaranteed he was in his bed spiraling.
Of course.
Because that's what people do.
Well, and it's 100% what he does.
Yeah. And, like, he wants to make up. And, like, they're not being, like, snarky at each other or anything. Mm-hmm. And he just asks her to let him in so that they can have, like, a conversation in their heads. Because she's had her shields up so he couldn't talk to her. Mm-hmm. And they hold hands. So, like, it's just sort of insinuating that this is not a deal breaker. And then she asks, like, in their mind conversation, because this isn't something they can talk about. She asks if he's ever used intentions, like her intentions, to influence her. And he said no. But he says, like, because of our bond, you have unintentionally sent your intentions my way. Like, he was like, sometimes, like, you know, I couldn't shut you out.
Yeah.
And, like, she gets embarrassed because she knows that, like, shit, well, he's definitely talking about that time I really wanted to kiss him.
Yeah.
And she's like, whoa, embarrassed about it. And I'm like, girl, you've had him, like, lick you out. And you're embarrassed about, like, kissing, about wanting to kiss him? It just seems a little bit like, come on.
I know, but I do understand where she's coming from. Especially in the beginning, before they were actually, like, together. Like, the first time that, when she didn't even know how to shield out her dragons, and her dragons were having sex, and she was like, oh my god, I need him right now.
Yeah.
And he was like,
okay.
Untouchable.
Yeah. But, like, he also then tells her that he stopped reading her intentions as soon as she meant something to him.
Which was a long time.
According to this book, apparently it was ages.
Right?
But, like, sort of, I guess, he realized that if he were to, like, read her intentions, he was no better than Dane. Which, Violet's like, well, that's not true. Like, she says that to herself. She's like, well, no, he's wrong there. Because Xaden, like, has never taken my information and, like, used it. So...
Which he just said he did, though.
But he didn't. Like, he never took it and used it against her, really. Like, he said sometimes she would shout her intentions at him.
Against her. But, like, if her intentions, when she first found him, were, like, I'm gonna tell on him, he would have killed her.
I guess, but, like...
So, it's not in a bad way using it against him, but he was like, oh, she's not gonna tell anyone. So now I can act a certain way. Like, he still used the information, and, like, he still probably kissed her because she wanted him to, and, like, I rationalize that he's not as bad as Dane because he doesn't have a choice, it doesn't seem like. Especially with theirs. Correct. Because of the bond.
Yeah.
And I don't know how other people's work either. Like, does he have to search for them? Or do they just come at him?
We'll get into it, but I do think that, like, they just come as long as their shields are down.
Yeah, I knew their shields had to be down. But, because, like...
Can you imagine feeling all of that?
Well, exactly. And that's why the Intrinsics, I think, kind of go crazy, is because they can't handle all of the information of, like, the ones that can actually read your mind. Like, in the first book, we saw that one guy, and he kept saying what people were thinking, and he was, like, screaming, and then Kara came out and snapped his neck.
Yeah.
So I do wonder if his just like actually comes at him, or if he has to actively like search it out for people that have their things down.
Yeah. I don't know.
Me neither.
Anyway, so Violet, Xaden, Mira, and Ulysses, who I'm assuming is a member of the assembly, approach Melgren's party, and that includes Violet's mom. And they're like, oh, she looks exhausted. And they exchange pleasantries. And Melgren just, like, sort of asks, like, do you know why I let you all go? And I let half the cadets go and all this stuff? And they're like, no, but I guess you're gonna tell us, like...
Yeah.
And he says he needs them for an upcoming battle. And he says that he's seen it. That the Venin come for Samara, and they win. And if they overtake an outpost, the wards will rebound to their original... I'm calling it their original spot, but I guess their original, like, distance.
Yeah.
Because as we learned, like, ages ago, they use the daggers imbued with the alloy to extend the wards. So if the Venin come for Samara, then that outpost, which is extending the wards, those wards will be brought down, and then the wards will snap back to where they would originally be. And it leaves a lot of villages open, I'm assuming.
Yeah, because I think, like, they obviously just flew to the edges of the wards that they did in Aretha, or whatever it's called. Aretia, whatever. And it's only, like, a 2-hour flight. So, obviously, Samara is, like, a full day flight. So they really have stretched it out.
Yeah.
Like, if it's only 2 hours versus
8.
like 10 extra hours, and it's a circumference of a circle or something, like, that is a lot of area that'll be left out.
Oh my god, your math skills are showing. Anyway, so, like, Violet just tells Xaden to, like, stop feeling guilty for reading her intentions and read their intentions. And I'm just like, you're mad at him for using them on you, but, like, you're very willing to use them on other people.
Yeah.
So, like, everybody is shielded except for one major, and I'm like, why is that? Like, I would question more so why that one major is not shielded.
I guess they all just assume that if anybody had this kind of power, they'd be dead, which is just stupid. Because, like, people have other kinds of powers, like, what's-his-face, Varish could figure out your, like, biggest fears if you were, or your biggest weakness if you didn't have your shield up. So I don't understand why people don't shield.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, maybe, do you think that could have been intentional?
But I just don't know, like, unless they knew about Xaden's signet.
Which,
like,
they
what
can't.
Was the intention?
They can't.
Yeah, but, exactly, but what was the intention? Like, I can't see the logic there. Because, like, unless they thought that Dane was going to touch her face, which, like, nobody would let Dane touch their face now. I just don't, like, it could be. There's 3 more books. Maybe everybody already knows about Xaden's second signet, and this is a whole, they're all playing us.
Maybe. Anyway, so the major that he reads, I guess he tells Violet about it immediately. He says that she's super scared and she really wants them to agree, and she really, like, wants to go for dinner after, and, like, she wants to diss Violet's mom and all that. So Melgren just, like, wants them to be allies. And he wants their riot to fight for them because he didn't see any of them fighting in his vision. So, like, he thinks that that's the reason they're going to lose. And he was like, if you agree to fight for us, like, King Tauri has told me that they will respect the riot you've created and, like, let them keep their their area, like, they can stay sort of independent, I guess, be on their own. They won't conscript them for their army or anything like that. But then they also say, but if you're not our allies, you're our enemies. And Ulysses, I guess, is really I'm not going to say he's the only adult, but the most adulty adult.
He's the adulty adult that's actually on the
assembly.
Whatchamacallit. Yeah.
So so he's just like, no. And it's really funny because I honestly thought that maybe they would like be like, we'll think about it.
Yeah.
But Ulysses is like, nope, we won't help a kingdom that hasn't helped anyone else. And essentially is like, you deserve everything you get. So, peace out.
Yeah.
Which is...
It's also like, if you're amassing this many enemies, that's not good for you. Like, I know you have wards. It's your big thing that you've got. But like,
Yeah.
You're fucking yourself over.
Anyway, then Brennan comes onto the scene, essentially like shocking his mother to her core. Yeah. And he just reiterates the same point and like essentially calls out the mom, be like, if all three of your kids are on the other side of this, like you might want to think about like what you're doing. And Xaden is like, well, you heard them, I agree. And they essentially are like, they just want to leave them to their own demise. And, like, Violet is the only one who's in her head now thinking that, like, civilians don't deserve to die because leadership was, like, making a terrible choice.
Yeah.
And it's like, way to go, Violet. Like, good for you, girl, I guess.
You care about people, but not if they're cat.
Way to go. So Melgren obviously is pissed, and, like, the crew, and they all leave. But they give Violet's mom, like, a minute to sort of stick around and say goodbye.
Because now her children are enemies.
Yeah. And she's, like, in tears because Brennan is alive. Mm-hmm. And, like, she's like, how long have you known? And Violet, like, he's the one who healed me for 5 months ago. And she was like, you've known that long and lied to me? Like, how dare you? Yeah. And they're like, oh, karma. And essentially she's just like, all I want is for my children to survive. So she's like, and she sort of is like, that's all I want. Like, I don't really care about much else as long as you guys survive. So she also tells them that their wards are going to fail because they have, I guess, sort of the hint is they have the wrong journal. They have Warwick's journal. Which is
so shitty.
I know. It's like, of course we do.
Yeah, she couldn't have like just given him the other one, and we'd be like so farther ahead.
But essentially, so she hands over. She said Warwick didn't want anyone else to possess the knowledge. So essentially, insinuates that like Warwick purposefully left some things out. Mm-hmm. So their wards are not going to work well. But Lyra, she did believe in letting everyone have the knowledge. So Lyra's journal is the other one they were going to steal. Mm-hmm. And
well, they did
steal it, but then Violet kept it with her, so Varys took it back. Mm-hmm. So she actually hands over Lyra's journal. So they couldn't read it originally, but she, obviously, because Varys took it back, so they have taken it. She took it and is giving it to them. So she also tells him to, like, because they sort of don't believe her, because they're like, the wards worked. But she's like, if you don't believe me, cut open the wyverns that died. So, like, the wyverns that died against the wards yesterday, she said something like, there are stones inside with runes on them, just open them up.
Yeah. So, and Violet is also thinking of, like, what's her face using her lesser magic, and she's like, yeah, there's probably something wrong with them.
Yeah. So obviously this journal is in a language that Violet can't read, so she's like, it's all Jesnia. Like, this one's all her. Fair. And before the mom leaves, she tells them that she loves them enough to bear the weight of their disappointment, which I actually really like that line. Mm-hmm. It's a very parental line. Like, that is something that you absolutely would that your parents would say.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they love you so much that they don't care if you're disappointed in them. Or if they're disappointed in you. You just want them safe. So, like, I really like that line.
Me too.
So, they all leave, and Violet and Mira go to the carcasses on their own when they get back to Aretia. And they fish out one of the stones, and it reanimates the other carcass for some reason. And they're like, ah! And Violet just instinctually, like, lightnings it to ash. And I'm
like, are the rest of any of them that might be around? Like, or did only these two go through and then they were like, pull everyone back?
No. But, essentially, like, they're like, we need to figure this shit out. Mm-hmm. And, like, Violet feels really pressured because she's like, well, this is all me.
Yeah. Well, she's like, I fucked up.
Yeah.
And you're like, well.
Yeah. So, so then we have another excerpt from Warwick's journal. So the combined hatching ground is their greatest asset and their greatest liability. And I'm just like, what do you mean their greatest? Like I was like, what do you mean like their combined hatching ground? What does that mean?
Yeah. And what does that mean? And do they mean it's just an asset because there are dragons there, or does it mean something else?
I don't know.
Interesting.
So Violet has been meeting with Xaden, and they've just spent a week apart. So it's a week after the meeting in Athabine. So apparently he's been monitoring Drathis, and she's been trying to convince Brennan to rethink his stance on the fight at Samara. And so I guess Xaden reached out and said, meet me in the sparring gym. So he wants to spar since he knows they'll be fighting anyway. He's like, we might as well fight this way. But she's just like, I don't want to fight you.
Yeah, I kind of like it.
I do too.
Yeah, fight him.
I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. And she asks if he wants to argue about the results of the assembly's vote. So I guess when Ulysses came back, they put whether they should send their forces to Samara to help. They put a vote to it. And I guess...
Which it seemed like they weren't going to do, and I'm glad they did.
Yeah. And Xaden just said he was on the losing side. And we already know that Violet has been trying to convince Brennan to change his mind. So, like, the assumption here is that they're not helping, but Xaden wanted to.
Yeah, because he cares about people, or because he cares about what Violet cares about.
Yeah.
We don't know for sure which one it is.
Exactly. So, so she's like, well, do you want to argue about that? Or do you want to argue about the secret he kept? AKA him being an intrinsic. So they spar a bit anyway, like nothing forceful. And Xaden tells her that he might be able to fight her physically, but she is capable of hurting him in ways she cannot even fathom, and that she has the power to destroy him. And I'm just like, I love it.
It's not super healthy.
No, I know. It's not healthy, but I still like it.
I do too.
So I guess he tries to be funny after that and says, like, we're not allowed to go back and fight in our bedroom. Like, it's a no fighting zone. I do too. And he's like, she was like, that's not a rule. When was that a rule? And he was like, I just made it. And then he's like, see, look, I just made a rule. Now you make a rule. So her rule is full disclosure. She says, no more ask me the right question because it's setting her up for failure, having to figure out what the question is. And he agrees, but he says, like, I need to know that you'll be here no matter what you find out. So no matter what I tell you, I need to know you'll be here. And I'm like, I don't know if that's really a promise she should make. Like, what if, like, he tells her that, like, he cheated on her or something like that? I think she should be allowed to walk away from that.
I just cheated on you with Kat.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And obviously not that, but, like, if he's like, I killed your father. Like,
Luke.
that would be real bad, and I don't think she could come back from that, even though, like, her mother... Well, it's not her, is the difference.
Yeah.
But if he did it, if he killed her father, I think if that happens in one of the next books, and that's their big miscommunication thing, I'm going to throw the book through the window.
Yes, agreed. Hang on. Plugged. I'm trying to get a charger delivered.
All good.
So she tells him that she won't run because she loves him and he's her gravity. He is the one force she can't escape. And I'm like, again, this isn't super healthy. Like, at the time when I was reading it, I was like, "Aww," but now I'm reading it back and I'm like, escape, huh?
Yeah, I still love it, but too. Again, not healthy.
No. So he offers her a question, and I'm like, stop with the fucking questions. And she just asks about his mom. And I'm like, well, obviously this is going to come up because it hasn't been up all book.
Yeah, you asked about it not too long ago, and I forgot that it came up.
Yeah. So, like, she was like, there's no reference to her in this house anywhere. And it's really bizarre. Like, he says that essentially she had a marriage contract with his dad, and the marriage contract said that she had to stick around until an heir lived to be 10 years old. And after that, she was free to go, so she just did. And I'm like, did she not take part in any of the child rearing? Like, she just, I guess, didn't care and just left?
Yeah. Didn't love him. He's unlovable.
I didn't want you to have to do it. Thank you. So, then she asks about the signet. So, she wants the story now. So, he told her that it manifested about a month after the shadows. And he had seen, I guess, what happened to Intrinsic or Second Signets and, like, knew that it was bad news. So he lied his ass off to Carr when Carr asked him, like, sort of was poking and prodding and being like, any other power you're feeling? Or anything like that. So, like, they all figured that since he was really powerful with the shadows, then that was probably it. Like, he just got extra power from the relation. But he said it's also helpful because on paper, his grandfather is his great uncle. And I'm like, how the fuck did that happen?
Why?
I don't know.
And is it his mother's?
I don't know.
Like, is there going to be something, like, obviously something's going to happen with her in one of the future books. Like, is she one of the sages, or is she, like, the leader of the, like,
yeah,
she's got to come back up.
I've been reading theories that, that she is, like, a leader of the wyverns, or leader of the venom, for sure. Yeah. Now that's a theory.
So, like, obviously she's coming back, but then it just makes me wonder, like, is it her grandfather, and for some reason they were like, we'll say you're not from her. Like, I just don't understand
how they did it either. But
because if it was his father's father, there's no way to hide that because everybody knows who his father is. So, like, you'd assume they would know, unless his grandfather had his father so young that they were like, "We'll play it off that it's your sister's." Like, I just am so confused.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how they're going about it, but nonetheless, they are.
There's more to this.
Anyway, so, like, that's just the end of it. That's where it leaves. That's where it finishes.
Yeah.
But essentially, Scale made him swear, like, not to tell a soul. So he didn't.
Until her.
Yeah. He then asks, like, are they okay? And she just smiles and, like, they spar. So the insinuation is they're okay.
Which is good, because I was like, I can't do this
I know.
again.
So, a week or two later, and it's a couple of days before Melgren foresaw the battle in Samara. I think he said it was going to be on solstice, so it's like a couple days before that. And the assembly is still refusing to help. And everyone in Aretia college, which is what I'm calling it, to differentiate it from Basquiat. Everybody is like helping out in some way. They're either learning runes, imbuing conduits for weapons, like they're trying to get themselves ready as best as possible. So Violet has a new conduit, but it's attached to a chain, so she can drop it for combat if needed, but keep it on her person, which is hilarious.
And it won't just smash. Smart.
It reminds me of like what you do with babies when they're pacifier. You like clip it on.
Yeah, or old people with their glasses.
Yeah. So I'm calling it battle brief, and they're discussing how the Wyvern have left most of the strongholds except for Zolia. And they have a class discussion about Melgren's request. So some of the students think that they should go fight because they have families in Navarre that they need to keep safe. Yeah. But other people are like, so like when people are like, we have families, we should go help them. Some other people are like, well, they should have left then. Yeah. And then people are like, you're an elitist prick. Some people can't afford to just like haul up all their stuff and move, which is not a lie. But then they talk strategy about what they would do if they were Melgren. So like a few of them pipe up on things, but I guess Brennan and Devara ask Violet what she would do, and she sort of mumbles something about like, you mean not, like, besides leaving all of their civilians to die? Like, sort of a dig. And Brennan sort of is, like, rolling his eyes at her, like, but then she said, like, if she were Melgren, she would haul the daggers from the outposts to bolster the wards at the regular borders, like the true borders of the ward. Because as long as the wards stay intact, the venom cannot channel, and the Wyvern die. So, like, essentially she's saying as long as they stay safe inside the original wards, there's no risk. Mm-hmm. So, like, because someone was like, so she's like, you know, there's no risk to the Vale, to the hatching grounds, as long as they, as long as the wards are there. And Devera asks what would happen if Samara was defeated. And then she's still asking Violet, so Violet elaborates and just says, like, well, the wards would rebound to their original mark, leaving a portion of Navarre unprotected. But then she sort of is looking at the map and she realizes that Melgren was just bluffing. But we don't really get the true realization of that moment, because then she realizes something else by looking at the map and just grabs her stuff and leaves.
I don't really understand what she means about Melgren is bluffing.
Like, I guess he was all nervous about Samara falling and being like, you know, like that could harm the hatching grounds and the Vale and all this stuff. And she's like, but it won't.
Yes.
Right?
Okay, like it's I didn't realize he had said that.
I don't know if he came out and said it, but she's like, all it would do, it wouldn't harm the original wards. If Samara falls, Samara falls, but the original wards stay intact. So like, who realistically, I guess she's saying, apart from the fact that people live around, like, who the fuck cares?
Yeah, well, you wouldn't think Melgren would
exactly
care. Yeah, I gotcha. That makes sense now. Thank you very much.
Anyway, so she just grabs her stuff and, like, takes off without saying a word. But her friends are like, well, what's going on? And they follow her. And there was actually a really hilarious comment here. So, like, all of her squad followed her out of the room. And Kat and maybe, like, some of the other Griffin flyers are like, what are we doing? Why is she just leaving? And they're like, she's realized something. We've learned to go with it. And I was just like, ha ha ha, funny.
I like it.
So she rushes, like, she's talking to Xaden in her head, and she's like, I need you immediately. It's an emergency. And he's, like, in an assembly meeting, but he's like, okay, and just, like, leaves it. And then she realizes, and she tells Xaden her realization, that the Venin have been sitting at the border of Samara for 3 days, knowing they can't cross it. So she's like, what are they waiting for? So in her head, she's like, logically, they're waiting for someone to take the wards down. So she says, meaning the real battle is not Samara, it's at Basgiath. And she's like, that's also why Melgren couldn't see any of us fighting there, because we're not there, we're at Basgiath. So they all talk about whether they should go or not. And some people think that, like, Basgiath doesn't deserve it. But Violet's like, there are students there.
And there are students in, like, the other classes, too. Like, none of the healers or the infantry were even asked if they wanted to come.
Yeah, or not really any of the scribes either, apart from, like, Jesnia.
Exactly. So it's like, it's not even just the riders who decided not to. It's all of the other kids, too.
And, like, some of the riders didn't choose. Their dragons decided for them.
Yeah. Well, they're gonna get a surprise now.
Yeah. So, like, Violet knows they need to go. So, Tairn... Oh, so we have another... It's actually really funny. We have, in our next section, an addendum to the Book of Brennan, and it's Tairn's addendum. We do not eat our allies. So, they're getting ready to leave. It's 18 hours. It's an 18-hour flight to Basgiath. And Andarna's, like, really pissy because she wants to go, but she doesn't want to be carried. But, like, so far she can really only fly for, like, an hour or two.
Yeah.
And so, like, her and Tairn have fun quips about him being old. Apparently he's only in his middling years, which is wild.
Yeah. And he's like, but I'm bonded to the rider that I'm gonna die with. Like, okay.
Sure.
And I think he says that he's the leader of his den at this moment. And Andarna's like, I'm going to be the leader of my own den. And that's kind of what starts it.
No, I think it must be, it has to be Coda.
But I would think so too. But is he an elder? Can he not be the leader of his den because he's, like, in a different level? I don't really understand dragon politics.
Why not?
But it comes up that I think she's like, I'm going to be the leader of my den. And he's like, I'm only in my middling years. Like, you have lots of time.
No. So I think what he's insinuating is that he will get to be...
Okay.
He'll get to be the leader before she does. Because he's older than her.
Okay, that makes more sense.
And he's like... Yeah. So but when she says that, he says, I'm pretty sure Coda would have something to say about that. Because now...
Okay, that makes some sense.
Coda's the leader of their den.
Gotcha.
So... the Griffin Riders flyers are unfortunately staying behind because they won't be able to wield under the wards. And, like, obviously, they've been painted as the enemy this entire time. So they'd be under attack from everyone. Yeah. So it's better for them to stay behind. But Marin gives Violet bow and arrows before they leave. And she actually etched, like, fire runes, I guess, into the arrows. And she was like... As soon as you fire it, it'll explode. So,
Love it. Amazing.
Brennan and the Assembly is obviously against this. They think that Violet is wrong and that they're going to get themselves killed. But she's like, well, we're going anyway. So Xaden starts to order Rhiannon and crew to, like, fly, and he's going to take Violet, like, essentially to, like, split them up again, the same way the War Games did. But Rhiannon and, like, Sawyer and Riddick are all like, no. We're going to be flying together. So they put their foot down.
I like it.
So 18 hours later, they're almost at Basgiath. Their mother's dragon, Aimseer, is in the Vale. So they're like, so she's definitely here. And they just tell Andarna that she needs to go to the Vale and wait there and stay, like, protected, essentially. But she's like, I don't want to. But they're like, you need to go protect the other Feathertails. It's like when you give a toddler a job and be like, I need you to go do this. But, like, you don't actually need them to go do it. You just want them to stay out of your way.
Yeah. And safe.
Yeah. And safe. But she also tells them that she's going to go where she's needed. So I'm like, well, she's showing up in the middle of the fight.
Well, and this is the amount of time she says this. Yeah. It's like, okay, we get what you're saying.
You're not staying in the Vale. You're going to come help.
Yeah.
So she veers off to head towards the Vale. Violet and Tairn land, and I think they land, like, right in the courtyard. It's somewhere inappropriate to land.
Yeah.
They have to do it, like, one at a time. So, like, her and Tairn land, and she gets off of him, and then he rises again. Then Xaden lands, and then Scale takes off. Then Mira lands, and her dragon takes off, and Dane lands. Anyway, they told the Empyrean that they were there, and, like, the Empyrean is not happy about it, and they're informing Coda. And I'm just like, ugh, vomit.
I forgot that's how you spelled his name.
So, Violet's mom shows up, and they just straight up say, the wards are in danger. And she's like, I don't believe you. And she's like, let the fact that you're still alive be my sympathy. Like, let that be, you know, that's my generosity to you. And they're like...
I'm a bit over nobody believing Violet all the time. I'm like, I get it. She's the underdog. I get it. She's so smart. But, like...
Yeah.
Obviously, she's being pushed towards Xaden. He's the only one that believes her, ever.
Yeah, it's true. So, like, the mom doesn't believe them. And they're like, let us see the wards and we can prove it. And she's like, no. But they're like, listen, we know that you've sent every available rider to Samara. So we can overpower you. Which is hilarious. So she's like, oh, fine. So Tairn tells Violet as they walk to the wards that Garrick's dragon, Crad. Chad.
I
want to call him Trad. I want to call him Chad.
We'll just call him Chad.
Okay, Chad is worried. It's a terrible name for a dragon.
It's not his name, but we can't say his name.
So apparently he's sensitive to the runes and senses something. And they all explain it away. It's like they have a habit of just, like, not believing each other. Because they're like, it's fine. Basgath was built on runes. As if he's never been here before.
As if his dragon has never been here before.
That's what I mean. Like, poor Chad.
I know. He's like, no, this is different. Yeah. Please tell them it's different. And Garrick's like, shh.
Yeah. But, like, he just says it feels similar to what was at Resin. So it's a different type of feeling.
Maybe a lure of some sort, like it was in Resin, but okay.
Anyway, so they go down the ward hallway, and there's only 2 guards at the door. And they're like, I thought you said it was guarded. And she's like, it is. And they're like, 2's not enough. And the mom's response is like, camouflage. Like, we don't want to draw attention to it by having, like, an army of people in front of the door.
Like, I guess, but, like, you'd think they'd have more in the tunnel.
You would think. So, like, Violet is really uncomfortable as they're walking down the hallway because the chamber sort of smells like the interrogation room, and it's, like, drippy, and she keeps having flashbacks of Varish. So they continue on, and the next 2 guards are dead.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and, like, here Violet's mom is like, see? And then, like, the 2 guards are dead.
It's so bad, but you're like, yeah, see?
So they reach the chamber, and, like, there's just a giant dragon in there. And it's Bade, who is Jack Barlow's dragon. So she swipes at Violet, but, like, of course, Xaden grabs her in time. And then
because he can tell Jack's intentions.
Yeah. Can he tell Bade's intentions?
Oh, maybe. Jesus, what does this, like... I want to know more. I hope the next book is, like, dual point of view, because I want to know his intention reading shit.
So Bade then swipes at Violet's mom, who, like, cracks her head and goes unconscious, I'm assuming. Yeah, very useful. So the wardstone here is different than the one that they have back in Aretia. It's got runes carved on it and, like, a diamond pattern, and it's just on fire.
And they're like, oh, that's the difference.
Yeah, and I'm like,
it wasn't on fire.
Is it supposed to be on fire?
Yeah, really.
So Bade blows fire at all of them, and Riddick actually saves the day this time, creating a wall of ice for protection. And I'm
Love
like,
it.
doesn't fire melt ice?
And then it would just be steam on them, and that's also
Yes.
painful. But
It's fine.
I love
It's
it.
fine. But essentially, I guess Babe was using that as a diversion. So when they managed to like catch up to them, to Bade and Jack, oh yeah, Jack is there too, by the way.
Yeah.
But he hasn't done much yet. But he's holding onto her horn, and like she's rearing up at the wardstone, and then he slashes her throat and kills her and lets her blood spray all over the wardstone, which extinguishes the fire before her body like sort of lands on it and like pushes it over so that it cracks in half. So like Violet has a shot at like as he's like riding Bade's dead body down, she like flicks a dagger at him before Xaden grabs her to protect her from the debris of the wardstone falling and like sending things crashing. And then the hum of the wards is gone. So Jack did it. He brought down the wards. Was that the sad part for you? The fact that the dragon died? Okay.
No,
all right.
Okay. So yeah, so we get an excerpt from a book on magic, and it says, at its core, magic demands balance. Whatever you take will be recouped, and it's not the wielder who determines the price. Which is like, obviously.
So who determines the price? Magic?
Magic. I don't know. The gods.
Is it an entity?
I guess they do talk about gods a little bit in this book, but it's not like...
It's not...
I wonder if they're gonna...
Yeah, it's not like...
I wonder if they're gonna come up, though, because it's kind of like every now and then she prays to, like, the god of luck or the god of this. And there's 3 fucking more books.
I don't like it.
Me neither. Anyway, so, like you said, the wardstone's in 2 pieces, and Jack just, like, pulls the dagger out of his shoulder, but they're like, he only has minutes because his dragon is dead. And I'm like, obviously he didn't just kill himself. Like, he wouldn't do that.
That's why they said that! Oh my god, I'm a moron.
Because his dragon is
dying.
Yeah.
I'm such an idiot. I was, like, thinking, like, did Violet have poison on the blade? Like, what's going on? Why does he only have minutes? I forgot the key, sort of the key storyline of the book, that if your dragon dies, so do you.
Yeah, that's fine.
I just hang on, we can't get into it. Just keep talking.
Okay. So Mira goes towards him to try to kill him, but Xaden's just like, no. He's like, he's about to join his dragon, so we need to try to get some information before he does.
Right. I was, like, not in thinking about this at all when I read this bit.
The excerpt should have been, if your dragon dies,
yeah, I needed a reminder. Totally forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't really come out and say it. They expect you to remember it.
I did not.
Yeah. So yeah. He obviously wants to get information, but Jack just says, like, he isn't gonna die, and he reaches towards, like, the ground in front of him, and Nolan just fucking appeared out of nowhere. I have no idea where he came from. He wasn't with them before, but he just yells at him to stop, and he says that Jack is better than this. And Violet's like, he expected this to happen. And I don't know how she figured that out, but maybe she just knows Nolan really well.
I mean, she does, but also, like, plot reasons.
Exactly. But then, of course, Xaden confirms it because he can see Nolan's intentions were to heal Jack from being Venom. And Jack then tells them all, basically, his villain monologue.
We love a villain monologue.
We do. He says he chose, basically, to become Venom when he saw Violet bonded with the most powerful dragon, and he doesn't think that the dragon should determine their potential. And she just realizes, basically, like, he was Venom when he was on the mat with her the first time they fought, and he, like, pushed power into her, which is, like, the beginning of the book, really. So
I don't remember him pushing power into her.
Yeah, I think she said it, like, felt like he was pushing power into her, and, like, her body started to, like, I don't know, do something. It was in the first book. I don't remember it super well, but she does, which is good because it's her life.
We would hope she
should remember it better than us. Nolan then says, magic comes at a price. But Jack says that it's everywhere. What?
No shit, magic comes.
Oh, I thought you said oh shit. And he starts to take power from the stones below him. So Xaden pins him with his shadows and asks when he turned, and Violet just answers and says what she just realized. Or at least says, like, it was at least when we had our first fight and she, like, made him have an allergic reaction with the oranges. And they ask him how, and Jack says that there are venom among them, and the wards actually don't block it all out. So I guess they can still take some power if they're there. Like, I think we kind of already thought that the venom would live if they came inside the wards, but the wyvern wouldn't.
Yeah, and it's just, the assumption was that, so, like, I guess the venom's big sort of power move is that they can suck the power out of the earth, which, like, if you're standing on the earth, you're fucked. So, like, I guess maybe they can't do that, but they can still siphon what they need, I guess.
Yeah, and they can still at least just live.
I'm like, my question, so now that we know he's a venom, so do we think that him being a venom makes you more of an asshole? Or do you think, like, because I'm thinking about his dragon, like, I'm wondering if you turn venom, what does that do to your relationship with your dragon? Because obviously, like, did his dragon, obviously his dragon knew he was venom, like, right?
Yeah.
But, like, I don't think his dragon willingly just died.
No, I don't think so either. And I don't think it necessarily turns you into an asshole, because, like, obviously the first time we met Jack, he shoved a kid off the parrot. Like,
he was already an asshole.
Exactly. So, like, I think that, obviously we'll get more of it in the next book, but I don't know at all. And I guess that's why he lived, because you can't kill a venom unless you use, the like, the magic weapons. Yeah. So that's why he didn't die under the, like, tornado mountain thing.
Right.
Violet's mountainy thing. Yeah. So yeah, he says that he doesn't know why the venom want Violet, but that he is coming with a horde of greens. And Violet's like, oh great. And then she says, like, they need him alive, and she realizes the serum was actually developed for him, which makes sense to, like, keep him from venoming things.
Venening, yes.
Exactly. So he starts to take power from, like, the walls, and Dane goes over to and, like, touches his head to, like, get his memories. But then he grabs Dane's arms and starts to drain Dane, which is a sentence. And then Violet yells to Xaden to be like, he's gonna kill Dane, like, what the fuck? And Xaden ends up, like, knocking him out with his shadows, and then Nolan gives him the serum, so that's good.
Nolan is half on their side, but also half still a dick.
Yeah, I don't really, whatever. He's like a scientist, like, he's all in it for, like, all he cares about is figuring shit out, which, like, we're probably gonna be grateful for in the next book, but still. So Xaden asks Dane then, like, how many No, he asks her mom how many riders are here. And she says that there's 119 cadets and 10 leadership. And everybody that they brought. And Dane obviously saw Jack's memories, and he's just like, that's not enough. Like, we don't have enough people with all of the horde that's coming.
Didn't he say there was, like, 500 of them?
Yeah, I can't
I'm pretty sure he said there was, like, a horde of 500.
Yeah, there's, like, way too many. 119 cadets and 10 adults aren't going to do much. But they have 10 hours, maybe less.
Rally
so
the
they,
troops!
Like, start... Exactly. And then, like, I guess Coda's mate is here, and she, like, relays the information, but, like, they're not going to get back in time because we already know it's a 12-hour flight to Samara, and the battle is only less than 10 hours away, so they can't get back in time. And also the Venin are sending, like, a first wave of, like, the 500, and then they have a second wave. Like, what the fuck? And Violet just is like, we're so fucked. But Xaden just, like, winks at her. Which is kind of cute. Nolan heals her mother, because I guess she hurt her head badly. And he heals Riddick's hands, because I guess maybe his hands were steamed when he used his...
Perhaps.
I don't remember. But he can't heal Dane, so I guess Dane's just gonna have 2 hand marks on his arms for the rest of his life.
Sucks to be him.
And then they basically just say, like, there are 1,000 Venin on the way, so I guess there's 500 in the first wave, 500 in the second wave. And Dane asks them who of them has mastered a tracking rune, and nobody has. And he's like, fuck. And then he just says, Jack left lures all over Basgiath into the Vale for the Venin to follow to get here. So they should start destroying them to, like, I guess, hopefully slow them down. I don't really know. Like, I feel like they obviously know where Basgiath is, so I don't really get how destroying the lures will slow them down.
I don't know. But maybe the way to the Vale? Like, God only knows.
I know, but I'm like, wouldn't they be able to feel it once they're close enough? Isn't that what we learned from the last?
I'm just shocked because I didn't mention it in my part, but they kept talking about how, like, the ward stone, obviously we know that it extends upwards and creates, like, a dome of a ward, right?
Mm-hmm.
The cavern with the ward stone in it, that has an open lid. Like, it's open air. It's an open... And I'm like, how did nobody see it before?
Oh, yeah. They fly over there all the time.
Yeah. So, like, I don't understand how no one's been like, hey, there's the ward stone. Especially if it's big enough for a dragon to get in through the top. Like, that's a big hole. That's a big hole in the roof.
You make a good point.
Every once in a while.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. So... infantry cadets show up then, and they are going to help look for lures, and everybody's going to need to work together. And we're like, this is what that navigation course was all for. And Devera, like, I guess everybody is there, like, all the 119 cadets, everybody, and they're telling them, like, what's going to happen, and she basically says, like, the first years need to get ready to leave. If like, everything falls, if everyone dies, they need to grab the texts and go. Okay. And her mother tells them, or her mother's, like, telling everybody that they're trying to protect dragons in the darkest hour. And it's, like, a rally.
It's the rallying cry.
Yeah. And Violet tells Andarna she needs to leave, but she says she will be where she's needed, which is her motto. And then her mother, like, tells them to go into squads, and she tells Mira to be in Violet's group, but Mira cuts in and she's like, no, I should work with you, because she explains that she can shield now without, like, she can make her own wards instead of making, just extending wards. So, like,
She should protect her mother.
Well, and protect the Vale, too, because I think that was the plan, is her mother's going to be like, the last defense at the Vale, and then she's like, I should be with you at the Vale.
Right. And like, Xaden is there to protect Violet, so, like...
Yeah, and she literally says that, and she's like, Xaden is the best bet at protecting Violet. Right. Like, you don't need me to do it. And her mother's like, fine. And then she shows that they're going to divide the area into grids and give each squad a section to guard the air, and then on the ground there's going to be infantry guarding there. And Violet tells her mother that it's a mistake to abandon the Wardstone. And Warwick's journal, I guess, said that the Wardstone is over the strongest natural flow of power in Basgiath. Which is interesting, because you would think that would be the Vale. But I guess that's not natural. That's dragon made.
I guess.
Anyway, I don't know. But anyway. And her mother's just like, your opinion is noted, but we aren't going to guard the Wordstone.
It's like,
Great.
Thank you for sharing, but I don't care.
Basically. So the next morning, they're like, her and Xaden are getting ready, and Xaden is like tying up her armor, and it's getting all like hot and heavy, and they're like, we're about to die. Maybe we should just have sex again. And he like undoes her pants, and she undoes his pants, and then there's a knock at the door.
Always with the knock at the door.
I know. And he's like lifting her onto the desk, and we're like, they can be fast. And then no.
Like, I'm pretty sure this is the third time they've been interrupted with a knock at the door.
But it's like so close. And then Brennan is like, you should probably open the door. And she's like, what the fuck is he doing here? And the worst part is they open it, and it's like Rhiannon, Brennan, some second and first years that didn't come originally just came, and like the flyers are there, like Kat is there and Mirren, and you're like, ooh, so awkward.
Yeah.
And he basically says like the flyers are going to start looking for the lures because they're better with runes, so they might be able to find them faster. Sure,
I'll buy it.
And then they're going to fight with them. Yeah, if you say so. She then asks Brennan if he can actually mend the wardstone. And
it's a good idea.
Yeah. And then Rhiannon asks her mother, General Sorengale, for permission for their squad to guard the wardstone. And her mother's like, fine. I'll like let my daughter have this, I guess. Which is just so funny.
But I feel like so the entire squad, so like Rhiannon, Riddick, Sawyer, Brennan, Xaden, and Violet are going to be guarding the wardstone.
Yeah, well, Brennan's going to be inside trying to heal it.
I just feel like that's such a waste of like Xaden and Violet's power. Put you inside.
No, they're not inside. They're above it.
Oh, okay.
There was nobody guarding above it.
All right. Yeah. Still, though, what are they, like, they don't care about the wardstone anymore. You know what I mean? Like, no one's gonna come over to them.
I know, but you need to finish.
I know.
So, the next excerpt is from a Venin study, and it just says that it's believed that turning Venin heightens a sense, and the author thinks that the Venin who killed the old king developed better eyesight. And I think he said something about, like, there was fog and nobody could see anything. And I'm like, I don't think that's enough evidence, but no. Okay. But I guess we'll see next book. So basically everyone's in position for this attack. They're all in their little grids. Brennan, Sloane, Eric, and the other first years are at the wardstone, and like the first years are there to like keep them out of the way and safe, so that they're not fighting. And Brennan is trying to fix it. Violet has her regular 12 daggers. She has 2 alloy daggers and a crossbow. I think basically all of them just have 2 alloy daggers, and I'm like, that's not very many, but okay. And everybody kind of has a job and what they're supposed to do, and everybody's working in pairs because they noticed last time they fought Venin that like the Venin adapt really quickly, so hopefully with 2 people fighting against them, they'll find it harder to adapt. And Violet just reminds her squad to like try to kill the Venin, not the Wyvern, because if you kill a Venin, it'll kill all the Wyvern that it made.
Yeah.
Rhiannon, Riddick, Sawyer, and Violet all hug each other, and Violet basically just tells them, like, try not to freeze and, like, stay in the air, because if you touch the ground, a Venin could just suck all of the life out of it and get you.
Yeah. And
she says, no one dies today. And then she tells Andarna to stay hidden, and Andarna's like, I'll be where I'm meant to be. And I'm like, ugh, stop. And she also tells her to go to Marb, which is Brennan's dragon. If, like, everything goes to hell, go there. And she's like, you can choose to live, basically.
Why Marb?
She doesn't have a whole lot of hope.
Why Marb?
Why Chad? Trad?
No, I don't mean the name. I don't mean the name Marb. I just mean, like, why Brennan's dragon?
Oh, because Brennan's, like, one of the only ones that's not actively fighting. So his dragon's not fighting. All the other dragons are fighting.
Right.
Again, like, that's all I can think. So we get now that Jesinia is actually here, and she is studying Lyra's journal, to see what went wrong with the wards that they did last time. And Violet's like, what's she doing here? But they're like, well, if she figures it out, we really need to be able to put the wards up. Yeah. Then we get like Xaden and her goodbye, and Xaden says he loves her. And he says the world doesn't exist for him beyond her. And she responds by saying she loves him and not to die because she doesn't want to live without him. And it's just funny the way he says the world doesn't exist beyond her. And she's just like, I don't want to live without you. And I'm like, he is so far gone.
Yeah.
Like, he's further gone than she is.
Yes.
And she just doesn't see it.
Nope.
But he basically just says, but we're both going to live. And it's like, okay, good.
Well, I mean, there's 3 more books, so.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're pretty sure they're all dead at the end because this whole thing is a history book. So it's December, but it's warm and raining. And Violet, like, it finally clicks with her that it's her mother controlling the weather. And you're like, obviously. But it's her mother trying to give her, like, the best chances at using her signet. But that also means, like, griffins won't be able to fly because apparently they can't fly when it's raining, which seems like a really shitty, like, why?
I don't understand, like,
yeah.
If you have wings, you'd think you would develop the ability to fly in the rain.
Yeah. Like, most birds can fly in the rain and can swim. Like, it's weird.
All birds can fly in the rain, can they not?
Oh, well, yeah. I just said and swim.
Even
but
fucking
like,
flamingos.
I know, but like chickens don't really swim.
They also don't really fly.
Yeah, they don't really fly, but they're birds.
But like, you
so
would think
they don't really fly in the rain and they don't really swim, so they're a no-to.
But like, you would think that if you can fly not in the rain, you should be able to fly in the rain.
Yes, I just don't understand, like, chickens can be out in the rain and not get, like, cold, and, like, they have the same protection from rain as all other birds. Like, you would think that, why don't griffins? And how are they such a threat to dragon riders that, like, they're at war and it's this whole big thing when they're like, we can't fly when it's raining. Okay. Anyway, so basically the flyers are just going to be there to, like, on the ground and helping with the wounded. And I'm like, this seems like a bad idea, too, because nobody trusts the flyers. And now they're like, we're going to take care of the wounded. Okay. But that doesn't even come up. That's not even an issue that we hear of. So, okay. So anyway, Violet, like, climbs onto Tairn, and she takes out her conduit and her new metal bracelet to keep it on. And the venin are approaching, and Violet, like, starts to count how many venin are among the wyvern and starts to get overwhelmed. Like, she gets to, like, 24 and is like, I can't keep counting. But Tairn, basically is able to calm her down a bit. As soon as they're, like, in range-ish, she asks Tairn to ask her mother's dragon to move a cloud that's in front of her. And she basically, like, starts funneling her power into herself, but she's waiting for the cloud to be in the perfect position. And Xaden looks at her and he's like, be careful, because she's like just taking too much power in, but of course she's fine. But
I know it's a huge deal until it's not.
It's just not. And she's like, but I have to wait. And then the cloud gets over all of the wyvern and she like lets her power into the cloud, and then it just like trickles down into all of them. But quickly they all realize what's going on, and like a lot of them move out of the way. But it was a pretty good first shot, and she gets a few.
Woo.
Yeah. And then she, like, they start coming towards them, and she is able to hit another wyvern. She was aiming for a rider, though, but she misses the rider. But she hits a wyvern, and then Tairn, she starts to get flustered, and Tairn tells her to focus on her next strike, not the last one. So she focuses on what Felix taught her, and we're assuming that Felix had way more lessons with her than we saw. And she's able to basically hit the next rider, and then other wyvern fall with that rider, and we're like, good. The fighting starts, and the venin just, like, spread out everywhere and fight with everyone. They don't go immediately for the veil, which is what they kind of expected they would do. So Tairn's like, that wyvern over there is ours. And they like fly directly at it and it breathes fire at them. So they have to roll. And then she hits it in the tail with her power and it falls. And then there's another one below them. And Tairn flies into it and bites its neck. And Violet uses her conduit to hit a different wyvern. And another wyvern and a rider come towards them. But Xaden's shadows like pull it back from her. And like everyone is fighting there. But there's just like a second wave of wyvern just like
chilling out,
waiting, just there, and we're like, okay,
what are you waiting for?
Yeah, it's like, why? I guess, sure. So Violet is kind of getting overwhelmed because she keeps seeing her friends and her squad being attacked, but Tairn's like, this is what you guys trained for. Like, you need to be okay and trust them that they'll be okay. Like, they know what they're doing.
I mean, do they?
Well, does anybody? They're all children.
Yeah.
But he tells her she has to focus on her job. So I guess everybody else is fighting in pairs, but she is above everybody and then trying to, like, hit any wyvern that are higher so that she can aim at them without worrying about hitting any dragons and people. So she's actually fighting outside of their quadrant too, because they all have a certain section. So she's just like hitting anybody that is far enough away from anybody else that she won't accidentally kill someone that is on her team.
Smart.
Which would be so shitty. Can you imagine? My God.
Did we learn like what they did with Jack? Is he in the dungeon? Where like
he's got a serum in him.
They knocked him out.
And he's got serum so he can't do anything with his power.
Right.
But we haven't heard yet. We do hear by the end of the book what happened to him. But yeah, we don't know yet. So yeah, Tairn's basically telling her where to fire by telling her like a number on the clock, and then she's directing it. And she thinks like she isn't wielding the storm, she is the storm. Which I kind of like that line, but it's also super cheesy.
Well, it's a nice parallel because she sort of was like, oh, I'm just wielding lightning. It doesn't come from me. I'm taking it from the sky. So it's sort of a nice, like, little parallel of, like, she's realizing that, like, the power comes from within.
Yeah, that's true. I thought you were going to say it was, like, a parallel to her mother, because her mother is the one that is, like, making it stormy because she's got the weather signet and stuff.
Nah, fuck that.
So yeah, more wyvern come towards them, and they're like squad get into formation, and everything is super seamless, and they're all working together. And she sees Xaden for a second, and he looks uninjured, and Violet is like kind of on the verge of burnout.
A glimmer of hope.
Yeah, she's like, but everyone she loves is here, so it doesn't matter. So,
great.
Like that's how we should do it.
Healthy.
Yes. Violet at this moment, and I don't even know why, but she thinks like she knows the Flyers are definitely frustrated that they can't be fighting. But Violet's like, it's better that they're working on the ground. And Tairn says to her, you sound like, and then she's like Brennan? And Sigale pipes up. And apparently she just is listening in. But she just says, no, you're like Tairn.
Aww.
And it's kind of like, it is. It's a cute moment, but it's just like, is Sigale just listening to everything?
Yes.
Like,
I wonder if they've forgiven each other.
I know. They must have. Or maybe she's just sucking up. It's not even about Violet. So then Tairn bites a wyvern's throat, and a venom jumps on his back. And Violet's like, flatten yourself out. And she's like trying to take her buckle off so that she can get out, but she's stuck. And the venom says that Violet is the one he wants. And Violet throws a dagger at him, but he catches it. And the venom says, you'll meet them all soon enough. And then Rhiannon jumps in front of her. And then we get another chapter. Because that's how these chapters go, is they end on like a cliffhanger. But we get an excerpt from the Tactile Guide to Defeating Dragons. And I don't like this excerpt. And I didn't like reading it and then having to continue reading. Because it says, the easiest way to defeat a dragon is to kill its rider. And it says, though it will likely survive, it will be stunned long enough to be killed. And I'm like, who the fuck is going to die now because of this heading?
Yeah.
Like, that's immediately, you're like, somebody's dying. And then the next sentence is basically about Rhiannon. And I'm like, no.
I know. I will riot.
Yeah. So Rhiannon is fighting the Venom, and Violet tells Tairn to roll over when she counts to 3, and she tells Rhiannon to get down. And Rhiannon gets down, she grabs Rhiannon's ankles, and she shoots the Venom, like, in the sternum with her crossbow as she's, like, counting down. So, like, Tairn tips the Venom off once it's, like, shot with the crossbow. Because that's not going to kill it.
The explodey arrow?
I guess so. It didn't say. I guess probably, because that's probably why she was like, you need to tip it off or we're all going to explode. That would make sense.
So, like, does Dragonfire work? I forget. On the Venom? No.
I don't remember. Because, like, if you bit one in half, would that kill it?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Are they just too fast? Yes, Dragonfire works. Or biting. One of the two. We'll get to it in a bit. So, yeah. Rhiannon then is like, you're welcome, and Violet's like, you shouldn't have done that. But she jumps back onto her dragon, and Tairn says that Melgren is now apparently 10 minutes out, but nobody else could keep up with him, so it's just him that's going to get here first. And then they all hear Riddick's dragon scream, and look, and a wyvern, like, bit its hind legs and won't let go. And Sawyer gets to him first, but a wyvern, like, breathes fire at him, and he has to roll out of the way, and then there's another one close to him, and he, like, kicks it in the face to get it away from his dragon. But it bites his leg and just takes his leg off below the knee. Yeah. Gone.
His leg is
can
gone?
Anybody say hiccup?
Oh.
Yeah, his leg is gone below the knee. And obviously now he's, like, fucking bleeding out because he's just got an open wound.
Jesnia needs to get there.
She does. So...
They have a romance I've invented in my head.
You didn't invent it based on what happens soon. So Violet's like, we need to help. So her and Tairn, like, fly over. And there's another wyvern that's just, like, going to attack Sawyer's dragon. So Tairn goes after that wyvern, but she knows that she needs to go after Sawyer or he's going to fall off. So she does, like, a running dismount, which was, like, the whole thing that they were like, she can't do it.
Right.
But she does a running dismount off of Tairn onto Riddick's dragon.
Can you imagine, like, they're in the air at this point?
No.
She's literally running off of something flying onto something else that's flying.
Yeah, it is fucked. And, like, she's just, like, jumps onto Riddick's dragon, and I'm like, is the dragon fine with this? I guess.
And, like, is the dragon not also injured?
Well, that's the dragon that has the wyvern attached to its hind legs.
Still?
Yeah. So, she gets down there, and then she gives Riddick the crossbow, and says, once I'm on Sawyer's dragon, shoot the wyvern. And he's like, what? And then she, like, just runs up the wyvern's face. Because he's still biting Riddick's dragon, so she just runs up his face. Which is hilarious, and, like, one of the things I want a TV show for. And then she looks over at Sleeg, which is Sawyer's dragon, and she, like, begs him, I think? Yes, to help her, and she jumps onto his face and then swings for Sawyer. And Tairn is just like, if you don't die, I'm gonna kill you myself for jumping off. Like, he's just pissed. But he killed the other wyvern, not the one that has Riddick, but the other one.
Oh my god.
And then I don't really understand. So Violet grabs Sawyer, but I guess he's falling, because then they're both just free falling. And I'm like, why can't his dragon do something? Like, why can't Sleeg catch them?
Is Sleeg not injured, though?
I didn't really, like, think so, because it attacked Riddick's dragon. But, like, maybe Sleeg is too. Because, like, what you doing, man? So anyway, they're free-falling. And Xaden's just, like, in her head, like, what the fuck are you doing? And then he slows her down with his shadows. Which we love a slowing down with the shadows moment.
I mean, the only other one I could think of is...
That's the only
there's
one.
There's two. Well, there's one that I could think of. Well, it's not a romantic-y one. It's when Dumbledore... Arresto momentum.
Oh. I'm thinking of Aelin.
Oh.
It's also not romantic, but it's my favorite.
Yeah. My bad.
And it's a spoiler, so we're not going to go into it.
Sure.
Yeah. So then Tairn catches them in his claw, and he tells Violet that Brennan mended the stone, but he isn't hopeful. And she's like, why not? And he's like, Marb wouldn't tell me. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Why can't people just tell people things?
Exactly. So the ward stone is mended, but that just means it's no longer in two pieces. So it's basically at this point exactly like the one that was in Aretia. So they're kind of still at square one.
Yeah.
So yeah, they land, and obviously she's still holding Sawyer, and she yells for help, and she like tourniquets his leg, and she begs him to wake up, and she tells him he promised that they would all live to graduation, and he just whispers that he remembers, so he's still alive, which is good. Then Maren, Kat, and Bregan, who I guess is another flyer that I don't know, run to them, and Tairn senses that Sigale is in trouble, so Violet just tells him to go, because she's like, if Sigale's in trouble, that means Xaden's in trouble. But she feels through the bond that, like, he's alive, so he's, like, not in too much trouble, I guess. So then Maren and Bregan person take Sawyer, and Kat stays and says that, like, basically just says to Violet that she looks like shit.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Just jumped on, like, 3 different dragons' backs. I ran up a wyvern's face. I'm well aware I look like shit. Thank you.
That's my favorite, running up a wyvern's face. But then Kat says that she's impressed with what she did. And, like, somebody told her that, maybe even her Griffin saw it. Yeah. Violet just says, like, Kat would have done the same thing. And she's like, yeah, but I would have run faster. Which is just kind of funny. She's not going to change too much. But she does give Violet another dagger because Violet lost one of hers. And she gave her other one to Rhiannon when Rhiannon was helping her. So, like, you know, she needs one. And Kat says that she'll look after Sawyer. And then she's like, but you don't have to thank me for that. Kind of in, like, he's part of my squad kind of way it felt like, which I appreciate. And then I was like, are they going to have a romance?
No.
Like, I know they're not, but I was like, who is she going to end up with?
I don't know.
Maybe Riddick? Maybe Rhiannon? I don't know. Maybe she's bi?
Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe Imogen? That'd be cute. I love Imogen.
I also love Imogen. I love them all. If any of them die, I will be put out.
Well, you should finish the book.
Who dies?
I'm not telling you.
You're gonna tell me very soon.
Well, not very soon. Well, maybe soon. So they're just on the ground, and then Tairn says, behind you, and Violet turns around, and Kat had, like, started walking away, but there's a Venin behind her, which we're like, that's not good. But the Venin says there's no point in running because she'll drain the ground, and this will have all been for nothing. And she, like, gestures to everybody. So she's kind of, like, I took it as she's saying, if Violet were to die, this whole attack would have been for nothing. Because it really seems like there's something to do with her that the Venin want. I don't know. So then Kat runs back to help her, and Violet's like, no, don't come back. But the Venin's just like, I don't care about her, but I can't kill, like, she's not allowed to kill Violet.
Well, then.
Of course. And that, she also says Violet will be so much fun for him to wield, which is interesting. And her nightmares come back, and then the Venom starts saying, like, she's going to be so much more soon, and that he is going to give her the veil for this. And Violet realizes that Kat is amplifying the Venom's greed in this moment. Ooh. And she's like, oh, it's pretty cool when she's doing it to somebody else. I like it.
Yes.
Then another Venom just shows up and just says enough and, like, pushes Kat out of the way with his power. And I just always forget that they just have, like, easy power like that where they can just push people away. Like, wouldn't they just use that shit more?
You would think.
Right?
They're dumb.
And then Violet... Yeah. And then Violet immediately just is able to hit the first Venom with her lightning. And I'm like, shit, she's good. But then the second one that was there says interesting, and then just melts her conduit, and we're like, shit, she's fucked now.
But like,
Violet
are we not going to learn the lesson that, like, she didn't need it all along?
I actually don't think we learned that lesson. Which is good, because she needs to learn. I kind of appreciate that we don't really learn that lesson, because I'm like, she does need to learn how to do this.
Shit.
So Violet starts to panic, and it's just like her dream, and the Venom says he's almost here, and she's like spiraling. But then part of the cliff springs out towards the Venom.
The cliff?
And it's Andarna!
Yay!
Because when she hit earlier, she just, like, melded into the rocks, and Violet was like, holy shit, that's crazy. But now we get an excerpt from Lyria's journal, translated by Jacinia. And it says, I am alone in thinking the ward shouldn't only benefit Navarre, and it has cost me everything.
Yikes.
And I want to understand more about that.
Me too.
It's like, what?
Yeah, I don't understand it.
No, me neither. Like, did they kill her? Is she writing this as a ghost?
Yeah.
So Andarna just, like, hops in front of the Venom, roasts him with her fire, and then bites its head off and spits it out. And we're like, I guess that's a way to kill a Venom. So I don't know which part of that killed it, but it was the fire or the head or the both. Something killed it. And then Andarna just, like, says that she breathes fire. Because I think, is this the first time she's breathed fire?
Well, when they were in the cave, they were like, we don't have any light. And Violet was like, they were like, what about your dragon? And she was like, she doesn't breathe fire yet.
Yeah, because she's a little baby.
Because she's just a small little tot.
And yeah, so now she can breathe fire.
So, like, is that a new development? Or has she been able to all along and just hit it because she had to?
Why would she have to?
Because of what we're going to learn in a minute or two?
I know, but I don't... What would her fire have shown about anything? Would her fire have shown anything?
I mean, it's weird that, like, because it seems like her and the elders knew about her.
Yeah.
So, like, nobody else knew, so I thought she was keeping everything to herself.
Yeah, I don't know why she would keep that, because, like, I think all dragons can breathe fire.
Yeah, but I guess maybe the fact that she's special, she can breathe it, but, like, she couldn't before. Like, maybe they're not supposed to be able to when they're young.
Oh, yeah. I just took this as, like, she's grown up, and now she can breathe fire.
It's just a very, like... It's a very be, like, coincidental moment for her to develop the ability to breathe fire.
Yeah, that's true. But we need her to be able to in a second, or the whole book would be over.
It all comes tumbling down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely. And maybe it is just like a she needed to, so she did kind of moment. Violet is just kind of shocked at like how good she was at camouflaging, and she's just like, that doesn't make sense. She's like, she's a black dragon. You shouldn't be able to look like part of the cliff. Like, yeah, for sure. So Tairn and Scale land then, and like Tairn's like, you breathe fire, and he's like super cute, and I love it.
It's like a proud
mama
and papa.
Yeah. I said it in like a, you breathe fire, but I'm sure he's more like, you breathe fire. And it's like when a dad's like, you did. Or like, not like, you know, like not like, you did good or something, like, you did it. And you're like, in a completely monotone voice of a dad. Xaden tells her that Melgren wants them to meet at the wants her and Xaden to go to the Vale. So they start walking that way, and Kat tells her to ask her mother to cut the rain so that the flyers can start fighting. She says, like, they're the most experienced at fighting venom, so they really should be up there. And you're like, yeah.
Probably.
And then she says, if they're not gonna do that, then at least let them fight with the infantry. Which is like pretty badass, because the infantry are the ones that are killed the easiest and the most. So they're walking, and then somebody's like, hey, there's a scribe running after you. And Violet's like, oh shit, and she looks back, and it's of course Jesinia. So she tells Xaden to go on, and Jesinia tells her that she found the difference, but she thinks Lyra is lying, because she says that this, I guess, translation says 7 dragons fires, but that's impossible. And she reads out like the whole translation, and it says, the breath of life of the 7 combined and set the stone ablaze in an iron flame. Which is like, yeah, the breath of fire of the 6 and 1. 6 plus 1 is also 7.
What? This so they're the exact same to me.
But they're both like, there are only 6 dens. There are black, blue, green, orange, brown, and red dragons. That's the only kind of dragons. And we're all here like, we know where this is going. Mm-hmm. Of course. So Violet asks if she translated it wrong, but she like goes to earlier in the book, and she's like, in the beginning it says like, I am Lyra, one of the first 6. And she's like, this is what a 6 is in this language. And this is what this one is. So it's clearly different. And they're like, okay. But then they're like talking about it, and Jacini's like, there were 7, or maybe Violet thinks it, but there are 7 circles on the wardstone in Aretia, and there are 7 runes. So she's like, it makes sense that it's supposed to be 7. But then she just tells Jacinia to go to the infirmary because Sawyer's injured. And she's immediately just like, what? What do you mean he's injured? And I'm like, oh, they're already together.
It's like, I love how she's like, he's injured, aka he's missing a limb.
Yeah.
Like way
right?
to set her up there.
Yeah. But then she says, like, if everything goes to hell, you can be evacuated with him. Because I think Marina, I forget her name. Kat's best friend.
Marin?
Marin, yeah. Whatever her name is. She's gonna evacuate Sawyer, so she'll take Jacinia too, if everything goes to shit, I guess.
Smart.
So Violet is putting the pieces together in her head. And she's like, maybe the other one could be a griffin. And then she's like, well, if it were a griffin, then the flyer's magic would work inside of the wards.
So it's...
And I'm like, oh, so can we do that in Aretia with a griffin? So that, like, can we make that work, maybe? But that is probably another book. But then she starts to piece it all together, and as she does, every time she realizes something, she shuts it down so that the reader doesn't know what she's thinking, and also no one connected to her can know what she's thinking. So she, like, gets to this discussion with Melgren, and Melgren and her mother are there, and her mother's like, what are you doing here? And Melgren's just like, she's never far from him. And I'm like, didn't they ask her to come, or did Xaden just lie to her? But Melgren is ordering Tairn and Sigale to come guard the Veil now. But Xaden's arguing about it because he knows that, like, if they leave their squad and they focus on the Veil, then all of the cadets that are, like, just out there fighting, because it is all just cadets, like, it's not adults, they're all kids, they're all just going to be sacrificed. And Melgren's just like, well, we need to just wait until everybody gets here, so that's what we have to do. So he's just okay with sacrificing all of these kids. And Violet knows that they need the stone, and she's like, the only thing that is going to help this is if we get the wards back up. But her mother just says, like, the archives are sealed and we can rebuild everything else, so I'm not worried about the stone, basically. And Melgren just says, like, as spread out as they are, the wyverns are going to take them. And Xaden tells him to move all of the cadets to the Veil, but he says that Xaden may lead a rebellion, but he doesn't know anything about war.
Not entirely wrong, to be fair.
Well, I know, it is fair. But then he's also like, and because you're here, I can't see anything. And you're like, I'd like, if he wasn't here, they'd be way more fucked before now. You would, like, everything would be lost if they didn't show up, so fuck right off. Violet then says that, like, Brennan mended the ward stone, and she knows how to raise them, but, she's not sure yet if the, like, ward stone can be imbued with power. Like, I don't think anyone's tried that yet, because only certain people can siphon magic and imbue. And of course, they're just like, that's useless. We don't know if it's going to work. Let's not bother trying with the wards. And then the leader of the Venin shows up, and he's, like, in royal blue, and he, like, parts the wyvern and is, like, right in the middle, and everyone's like, oh, shit. Yeah. Like, it's not good. And her mother just says, like, it's too late for wards now. And Violet argues, and she, like, has, like, a really enheartened speech and, like, asks her mother to trust her. And she says if the stone can hold power, then she knows how to get the wards up. And if they get the wards up, the wyvern will immediately die, and the Venin will be near powerless. And she asks her mother to come check with her, and if it doesn't work, she'll do whatever her mother wants her to. Melgren is just like, enough of this, I'm not listening to children. And you're like, fuck.
Fucking tool.
But, right? But her mother says, wait. And Melgren is like, this is my army. And she's like, this is my school. And Xaden's like, well, half of the army is mine. And Xaden says he has no problem leaving them to die. And then Xaden just, like, goes to Violet and he says he's going to buy her time that she needs to get the wards up. And he says, like, he's the only one that can do it because the leader, the sage, is waiting for him. And we're like, what?
Oh my god, was I right?
I don't know.
Were the dreams actually Xaden's?
We're assuming so.
I was right.
But I don't know. I still am not sure that she wasn't having the same dreams. Like, not that she was seeing, because there's something with her that they want to wield her. So I wouldn't be surprised if the sage was visiting them both.
Okay. Pitting them against each other.
Yeah. But, like, getting in both of their heads so they both, like, fuck up. But we don't figure out this book which one it is. Maybe we'll never know. So now we get an excerpt of a correspondence between Liam and Sloane. And he says to Sloane, "You're going to love Violet. She's smart and stubborn and reminds me a lot of you. Just remember, she is not her mother." Which is something. So Violet and Xaden are talking, and Violet asks what he means when he says that they're waiting for him. And he says, the leader thought that they would be in Samara, and that's why it took him so long to get here. And she's like, how do you know? And he's
No.
like, do us both a favor and don't ask me that. Like,
Oh, Xaden, what have you done?
so like there's more than just the dreams that Violet has seen. So I don't know. There's something else there. So the sage is like dramatically slowly lowering to the ground. Like it seems like it takes forever based on like
Is he
how
floating
long they're
to the
talking
ground,
about
or
it
is he
happening.
using a wyvern to hover him?
I think he's on a wyvern, but maybe he's floating. I like that visual better. But it's like it seems super slow. I'm like, what the fuck? And then Violet's just like, okay, if you had to choose between wards here and wards at your home, where would you choose? She's like, I can only do this once. So where do you want me to do it? And I kind of appreciate that she makes him choose it.
Who?
Xaden. She's asking Xaden.
Who is asking Xaden? Sorry, I got lost.
Violet's asking Xaden where he wants the wards.
Right.
Here or at his home.
Oh, right. I get it.
Yeah. But he says that his home is wherever she is. So he chooses here. And he also says if she doesn't get the wards up, they're all going to die anyway. So it'll be lost with them.
True story.
Like, yeah, fair. So she turns around and just straight up talks to Coda, which is like not allowed.
She's not allowed to do that.
No. And she just says she knows that he knows, and we still don't really know what she's talking about, but we kind of do. And she says he didn't tell his rider because he was protecting Dragonkind. And she asks him if he will fire the stone since Tairn can't, since he did the one in Aretia.
Mm-hmm.
And Zane's just like, can't Andarna do it? And she just ignores him. And then Coda just nods. And we're like, okay, cool. We got him. So
Okay, cool.
Tairn like finally shows up and he's like, what the fuck are you doing? Because she's like blocking Tairn out, which is like not very easy. And he asks if she's courting death because she's talking to Coda. But she says that like she's dealing with somebody else's secret and not to push her to get into her mind. And he's like, okay.
It's like, oh shit. Sorry, girl.
Basically. So Xaden just says he needs to hold them off for her, and they kiss, and he says goodbye like he's going to go die. And I'm like, I want to know what his dreams were. Like, did he die in his dreams? Because, like, he's literally leaving like he's going to die. So she orders Tairn to stay with him and not to let him die, which I think is, like, a lot to put on her dragon.
Yeah.
But, okay. And then she yells out to her mother to stop the rain so that the griffins can fly and fight. And we're like, good. And then she just runs. And she gives it her all because she needs to save Xaden. And she gets to the word stone. And she asks Brennan if it works. But he's like so worn out from mending it. He can barely stand. But he's like, you can try to imbue it. Like, I literally can't do anything else. So she opens up her power. And Brennan asks her how long it took to imbue the stone at home. And she said it took weeks. And then she's putting her power into the stone. And it actually holds her power. So she's like, yay, but we're fucked because we don't have weeks. And Andarna comes down then. And Violet's like, I need to talk to you. And Andarna's like, I don't like going underground or going into caves.
Like, I don't want to do
She's
this.
like, no, get down here now. But Violet says she knows. And she tells Andarna that she should have known after Resin. And she says it's why Andarna was allowed to do whatever she wanted. Because she is the head of her own den already. Andarna tells her to say it, and it really just reminded me of Twilight.
Say it. What do we eat?
Basically, I was like, oh my god, it's killing me.
Killing me softly with his song.
Oh my god. And so Violet says that Andarna's scales aren't really black. And then one of the best quotes of the book is now, she says, Andarna says, but his are. And she says she wants to be just like him. And it's just so cute because she's so saucy, but she loves Tairn so much. I love it so much. But she says that Tairn doesn't know. He actually thinks that she's a black dragon. Which is why when she, like, said that she'd be the leader of a den, he was like...
You gotta wait till I
not for
die.
a while. Basically. But she says only the elders know. Like, none of the other dragons do. Violet tells Andarna that she could have told her, but Andarna says if she didn't figure it out, then she wasn't worthy of knowing, which I just love. And Andarna says she waited 650 years to hatch. And she waited until Violet's 18th summer when she heard them talk about the daughter of the general who would be the head of the scribes. And Andarna knew that Violet would have the head of a scribe and the heart of the rider, and that she would be hers. And Violet's like, but I wasn't going to be in the rider squadron. What the fuck? And I wonder if, like, did somebody influence her mother into doing it? Like, we got why her mother did it earlier. Or why she thought she did it. But I'm like, did, like, a dragon influence her somehow? Or give her the idea?
I mean, I'd like to know how the dragon, like, I don't know, man. Is this like a see into the future thing? Is it just a feeling?
Yeah.
Like, how...
Well, she could stop time, so could she see into the future when she was in an egg?
That's weird. And also, like, where the fuck did her parents go? Like, 650 years she was an egg? Did she have consciousness inside this egg?
Yeah, because remember the dragons decide when they want to hatch.
Yeah, I know. I don't like it.
I don't really understand it, but they make the decision, so I guess. But Andarna says, like, they're both unique and they want the same thing. And Violet's just like, but you couldn't have known. And she says, but we're here now. And we're like, something is happening.
What? We don't... What?
Yeah. And then Violet's like, you're the 7th breed of dragon.
Dun,
and
dun,
then Violet
dun.
asks... yeah. And then Violet asks if she'll breathe fire on the stone. And Andarna says that's why she was left behind from what she can remember. I'm like, what do you mean left behind? Where did the rest of her breed go that she was left behind as an egg? What does that mean?
Oh, I hate it. I hate the mystery.
Well, there's 3 more books.
No, they definitely pulled a, frig. What are those people with angel wings? But they're not angels. Seraphim?
Yes.
They're pulling a that. Remember?
I don't know what that is.
Okay, so remember in Act of War? The Seraphim had disappeared and were on an island and no one could find them.
Were they Seraphim? I thought Seraphim... I was thinking Crescent City. Are they in Crescent...
Maybe they're not called Seraphim. I'm talking about Miriam and Dracon and them.
Yeah.
Whatever they are.
Yeah.
They have feathery wings. I can't remember what they are.
They do. They probably can't fly in the rain. Yeah, I don't know what they are either.
Anyway, so they disappeared onto a forgotten island and just settled down. So what do you want to bet? Andarna's kind is doing that. And then one of the books is going to focus on them going on going on a mission. They got to hunt them down.
So that they can fire the stone in Aretia.
Yeah, maybe Rhiannon and Riddick will go off on that adventure.
Yeah. Probably. There's something there. We don't know what it is. So Violet's mother shows up then. And this whole time, Violet is still imbuing the stone with her power.
Yeah.
So just as a... But she's having these other conversations. But Violet's mother shows up and she sees Eric, whose name is Cam, and she's like, "Hey, Cam, your father's been looking for you." And he's just like, "I'm a bonded rider now, so it doesn't matter." And she's like, "I don't care." And I'm like, "You brought it up." So then she asks if, like, it's taking power. And I guess somebody says yes, because Violet is still giving power to it. And Tairn cuts in and is like, "You're giving too much. You need to stop." So she tries to feel to make sure that Xaden's alive, but he's blocking her. So Tairn shows her through his eyes Xaden fighting the Sage. And Xaden isn't doing very well.
Of course he's not. He's fighting against a sage.
By himself.
Is everybody else just watching?
No, I think everybody else is fighting all the other guys. Right. The second wave.
All right.
But there's a wyvern with, like, a cherry red fire, and she's like, "That's a breed we didn't know existed," because they knew there were ones with green and I think blue fire or something, so this is a whole new breed of wyvern. But he's doing badly, everything sucks, so she ends up going back to her own body, but everything is, like, ringing in her ears, and she can't really pay attention, because she's
giving
just, like,
too much
about him, too. And she's giving too much power, yeah. Andarna and Tairn yell at her, but she tells them they need to choose to live, because the only way to get the wards up is to give it all of her power. And her mother runs over to her and, like, tries to grab her, but her hands start to burn, so she has to pull away. And Violet thinks, like, she needs to do this to save her family, her friends, and Xaden.
Why can't someone else give half and she give half?
I don't know. So Andarna tells her to stop, but Violet says, like, "You have your purpose. Maybe this is mine." I'm like, I don't think your purpose is to kill yourself and your dragon and possibly another dragon.
And then possibly the man you love.
Your boyfriend. Yeah.
And then possibly another dragon.
Yeah. Who you actually, that dragon needs to live because it's the only one.
So, like, this is very stressful for her. Now she doesn't only have to ensure that Xaden lives because he's, like, the heir to the Terrador throne-ish. Now she has to also make sure Andarna lives because fucking Andarna is the only one of her kind.
Yeah.
Get her with a baby, like, ASAP.
No! I will not read this book if she's pregnant. I won't do it.
Andarna?
Oh, okay,
Talking about Violet.
Oh, but she's a little baby.
She's not, though. She's over 650 years old.
Well, she was an egg, but she wasn't alive.
Even still, and, like, she's a teenager at this point, and, like, people used to do that in the older days. Teenagers have babies all the time. Cats have babies when they're, like, 6 months old.
I know, it's a
It
sin,
is. Oh, I'm not debating that. It is, but I'm just saying, her race is at stake.
Yeah. I guess, like, chickens have eggs when they're, like, 2 months old, 3, whatever, very young.
Would you call hens very mothery?
Call them mothery?
Yeah. Like, if they were to have babies, would they be very mothery with their babies?
Yeah, like, I don't have a rooster, so none of the eggs can hatch. But sometimes, especially my white chicken, will sit on the egg and try to hatch it. And will, like, stop eating and, like, pluck her feathers so that she's warmer on the bottom and, like, try to get her egg to hatch. And it is the saddest but cutest thing ever. And you have to, like, distract them and get them up and eating and stuff.
That is so sad.
So, yeah, they're pretty mothery. Mother hen?
Oh, God. Oh, my God. That's why that saying exists.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought that for some, like, obviously Violet having a baby would do nothing for this whole issue, but I thought that you were saying that she needed to have a baby to, like, keep Xaden's line going. I guess it would give him an heir to the throne, so I guess it would do something.
Who the fuck cares? I'm talking about
no.
Andarna.
That makes more sense. Yeah.
Back on track.
Yeah, so back to it. She tells Tairn that he shouldn't have to lose 2 riders this way. And it, just even saying that, I'm like, there's more to the first death. I want to know.
I'm still convinced Nowlin is a Venin.
He has to be.
Like maybe he's even
imagine...
like the sage out there.
Interesting. I don't think so.
I don't think so either, because I think
Tairn
would recognize him, but it's fine.
Yeah. True. Maybe he has a hood. Yeah, I don't know. There's something else. Maybe he's just another sage. But yeah, so he demands that she save herself, and he says he chose her not as his next rider, but as his last. And if she falls, he will follow. Which I'm like, for that alone, you need to stop.
You're gonna kill your dragon.
Yeah. And she actually thinks in this moment, she understands why someone would turn Venin. Like, she has one of the most powerful dragons in the world, but it isn't enough. And then she hears Sloane say, I won't do it. And she's like, what? And then her mother just, like, kicks her off of the stone because she just burnt her hands by touching her. So she's just like, and just kicks her away. But she, like, flies back, but she's still letting power out. So, like, lightning just, like, hits the ceiling. And then, like, her brother comes over and starts mending her. But her lightning is still going out, so she has to, like, focus herself to, like, stop it. Or she's just gonna keep losing or using her power, and her brother's gonna mend her, and then they're both gonna drain and die. Yeah. So she's able to close off her power, thankfully. And then, Brennan is, like, healing her as best he can, because he's also
very,
shit. But then her mother is yelling at Sloane, and we're like, what the fuck is going on? And I thought that her mother was going to kill Sloane first, when I read this the first time. But she says, like, if she wants to power the stone, she has to do this. And she says, you're a...
Maori.
Maori? Is that the last name? Yeah, you're a Maori. And she says that she tracked down her mother and killed her in front of Sloane and her brother. And then she says she could have saved her brother if she paid more attention to her aide last year. Which is, like, true. In a way.
Yeah.
Violet yells no, but Eric comes over to stop her. And she yells out to Andarna, who's like, I'm not going to get in between this, because if I have to choose between you and your mother, I'm choosing you. And we're like, what? And then her mother tells Sloane that they're up there dying. And she says, Terrandor's heir is dying. And she can stop it. And she can save them all. And Violet screams out, like, don't do it, Sloane. That's my mother. And she thinks that, like, Sloane might not listen to her, but she might listen to Xaden. So she opens her shields and, like, connects to him. And she just feels agonizing, blistering pain.
Yikes.
And hopelessness.
Oh, dear God.
And helplessness. And she's overwhelmed by it. And she just, like, uncontrollably whispers, Xaden's dying. And, like, Sloane hears that. And I'm like, that's definitely not going to get her to do what you want her to. And her mother says that Sloane just needs to stand there. Her signet will do the rest. So, obviously we know what's going to happen.
Oh my God, is Sloane going to die?
No.
I know who's going to die. It's fine.
So Sloane says Violet and is, like, trying to, I guess, check in with her. But she's not really in her head yet. She feels like she's on the battlefield. And the last of her power is being used to save the one she loves. So, like, she's feeling Xaden's power, what he's feeling. So she yells down the bond to, like, all 3 of them, Terrence, Gale, and Xaden, to fight. And then she yells out to her mother, but she says, it's all right. as soon as her power is in the stone, fix the wards. And she says there's nothing she wouldn't do to save her children. And everything was to get her to this moment when Violet would be strong enough. And she says, you're everything we dreamed of, or we dreamed you would be. And she says, all three of you are. And then she says, and I'll get to see him soon. And this is what broke my heart. Because she's talking about her husband. And that's what made me cry.
Yeah, it's quite sad.
It is very sad. And she's like, just like, this is what I need to do. And at least I'll get to see my husband soon. And you're like, ugh, we thought you didn't have a heart.
I know. But, like, I would secretly love, like, I get that she's gonna die. But, like, I hope that that Rebecca Yarros figures out a way to, like, tell us more about General Sorrengail's intentions. Like more of her thought process when she was being a bitch to everyone.
Yeah, we kind of get a bit more in a few of the excerpts at the end of this book. But I do hope we get more, because the way she's talking to Violet, I'm like, they created her.
Yeah.
Like, this weird hair thing and the fact that, like, she's different, like, there's something that they did to create her the way she is.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Brennan, like, crawls over to try to stop it from happening, but, like, it's already happening.
Doesn't work.
Sloane is siphoning the power
from the mother. So
is
is Sloane siphoning from the mother and, like, having her hand on the rock?
Into the stone. Yeah. Because
that's more,
I guess her mother can't imbue the stone. Her signet won't.
Right.
Yeah. So she had to find a siphon. We're like, I don't know why certain people can and certain people can't. So yeah, he goes over to her. She just tells them all to live well and then just, like, falls into his arms and dies. And Eric lets go of Violet and she goes over, but their mother's already dead. And then Mira shows up and she just goes over to Brennan and she's like, what did you do?
I love it.
I'm like, it wasn't him, but okay. And Sloane just apologizes, but nobody really, like, nobody says anything to her. Which I'm kind of glad about, because I didn't want Mira to, like, be pissed at Sloane, because, like, it's not her fault. And Andarna then says that to Violet that Xaden needs her, and he's waiting with Tairn and Sigale. We're like, okay. So they end up dragging everybody out of the room, and Mira asks if Violet's okay, but she just said that, like, she couldn't stop her from doing it, basically. And then we get that Andarna is kind of, like, blocking the door to the room while all the rest of the dragons are, like, firing the stone. So the wards are happening.
Ooh.
And then Violet feels it work. And they go back inside, and, like, Violet looks at the stone, and the iron flame burning on top is all that's left of her mother.
Ew.
Like, ooh.
That's title of the book is her mom's remains.
The title of the book. Basically. So then we get an excerpt from a recovered on-sent letter from General Sorrengail. And it says, most generals dream of falling for their kingdom, but you know me better than that, my love. If I fall, it will be for our children.
Oh.
Which is sweet. And what happened? And I'm kind of glad it wasn't the excerpt for the last chapter, because that would have been way too much of a spoiler. Yeah. And it wouldn't have gotten me as hard as it did. So there are thuds. They can just hear thuds everywhere because they're inside of a tunnel, and they're like, what the fuck is going on? And Andarna's just like, it's wyvern bodies. The wards are up. All of the wyverns are just falling and
love
dead.
it.
We're like, yay. And Andarna asks Violet to forgive her, but Violet's just like, no, my mother made a choice. Like, it's not, I don't blame you. And I'm like, is she growing?
I don't know.
But I'm also
sounds a little like suspect, too. She's like, it's not your fault. I don't blame you. But, like, secretly, maybe she does a little.
I know, but she doesn't seem to blame her dragons as much as she blames Xaden. So maybe she'll just blame him somehow. Tairn is just like, you're alive. And she's like, what about Xaden? And she tries to feel for him, but his shields are up. And Tairn just says that he's alive. She's like, okay, good. So they go outside, and everybody is obviously celebrating, and Dane, like, walks up to her and is about to, like, touch her face, and then he's like, wait, no, that's a bad idea.
Way to go, Dane.
And then Rhiannon just, like, pushes him out of the way and hugs Violet. And I'm like, great. And Rhiannon is just like, you did it! You got the wards up! Because, like, everybody knows it was her. And she's just like, are you hurt? And Rhiannon's like, no, like, it's just a cut or whatever. And then we get that the wyvern fell and the venom fled, but leadership are hunting them down. And Violet asks about the others, and Riddick is okay. Imogen took a swipe to the side, but is doing okay. Quinn was hit in the cheek and is still alive. And she says she's going to check on Sawyer. And she asks Violet about Xaden. And she tries to, like, connect with him again, but can't. And she's like, he's alive, according to Tairn. And then Rhiannon's like, what's going on? Like, you don't look happy. And Violet says, I think she just says, like, my mother. Yeah. And then she cries into Rhiannon's shoulder. And Rhiannon asks what she needs. And she just, I think she, like, I don't know if she says it out loud or if she thinks it, but she knows that she needs to see Tairn and Xaden. So Tairn tells her, like, where they are. And they're, like, over in a field somewhere. She's like, okay. And she passes Melgren and Devera negotiating their return here, which is interesting. And she realizes, like, this time they're not going to be able to hide all of the wyvern bodies from, like, the people in the villages and stuff. Like, they're going to figure it out this time. Yeah. Like, they're not going to be able to hide all this. Maybe? I guess we'll see in the next book. And she walks past dead wyvern and dead dragons, but she doesn't recognize any of the dragons. And she then, like, walks up to Tairn and she's like, you and Andarna need to catch up right now. Which is just kind of funny. I'm like, what happened to it not being your secret? It's Andarna's secret, but...
Well...
Yeah. She should tell him, but it's just funny. And then she, like, walks up to Sigale and, like, she knows that Xaden's behind her. And she's like, are you gonna let me pass? And Sigale's just like, you fought well today. And Violet's just like, you did too. And Sigale's like, it's what's expected of me. Which, I'm like, okay. Sigale then says, be careful of your words. And then she, like, lets Violet pass to go see Xaden. And he's facing away, and she can see, like, he has a cut on his back. And she asks what happened, but he's, like, just facing over into the ravine and just, like, looking away from her. And he says that he snapped whatever tether the sage had on him and killed him. And his body fell into the ravine. And now he's watching it, like, the sage is going to pop up. And she says she's sorry she wasn't here. And he says he's not. She saved them. And she says her mother did. And that Sloane siphoned her. And her dragon. So, like, her mother and her mother's dragon both died. So Sloane siphoned her mother's power and the dragon's power into the stone.
The dragon died too?
Yeah.
That's a shame.
Sad.
Did the dragon consent?
I hope so. Maybe he was like, this is my last one. I'll put my power in to keep everyone. Like, because, like, if the dragon didn't do it.
I know, the hatching grounds.
Everybody else would have died. Like, even though, like, I guess you can't ask people to stop fighting to get them to, like, add some power into the stone. Like, there's no real.
Excuse me.
No winning
Excuse
here.
me, on your way. Can you just imbue this real quick?
Real quick. and then go back out like half power. And so Xaden says to her that he's sorry, but she's like, my mother killed your father. And he's like, yeah, but I don't want anyone you love to be dead. He's just like, he's sorry for her, not necessarily cares that it's her mother kind of thing. Which is fair. Like, I think that's a reasonable... Like, he's still gonna care if she's sad, even if he, you know, doesn't have the best relationship with her mother.
Yeah.
Violet then says that, like, Melgren wants them to come back. And he says, so we will. And he's like, there are wards here now, so, like, that makes sense.
But there were always wards there.
Yeah.
It's not like these are new.
No. Yeah. But he asks if she'll explain, like, how she got them up. And she's like, yeah, of course. But, like, he keeps avoiding eye contact with her. And he says, it's safer for her here, and she won't be afraid under the full wards. And she's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, what could be scarier than, like, what we just went through that I'd be afraid of? And he says, you love me. And she's just like, you know I do. And he slowly looks at her, and she just thinks no, because she sees that he has a red ring in his gold-flecked onyx eyes, and he says, me. You should be scared of me. So then, we get an excerpt from Nolan to General Sorengale. And it says, we've tried every method we know of. As you've requested, there is no cure, there is only control. So, it was on her mother's orders that they were trying to fix Jack? Which is interesting. I'm like, who is a venom that she's trying to heal? Like, is her father? Not her father. Like, I don't actually think that I don't think that her mother thinks that her husband is a venom, because she said, I'll go back to him. That was very convincing and broke my heart. But I'm like, is there somebody that she's trying to save? Or, like, did she see the future and know that, like, or think that, like, Violet was going to turn and she's trying to find a cure? Like, what does she know? What is she doing?
I don't know.
So this is some of her motivation that I don't understand, that I'm sure we'll get more of. This is also the last chapter, and it's in Xaden's point of view. And he's suspended in the air by the sage, who wore him down just for fun. And he just thinks, like, they aren't a match for Xaden. And his body is screaming, and the sage says that burnout hurts, and magic does like balance. And Xaden thinks, like, this is just like his nightmares, but this is real. So we get, he was having nightmares too. They could have been all his. I still don't know. He knows Violet is trying to get the wards up, and Tairn is, like, picking off the wyvern above, trying to keep, like, Sigale alive, because the wyvern are keeping Sigale away from helping Xaden. So it's just, like, not great. And then Xaden thinks, what is it about him that fails all of the females in his life? Which is awful, because you know he's, like, thinking about his mother left him when he was 10.
Yep.
Which is the saddest. The sage tells him that he has one chance to make the right choice, so they can get it over with. And Xaden falls on his hands and knees, and the sage says that he, like, I guess he told him that he would turn for love, so he shall. And he says, I'm, like, I know more than you think. And Xaden's like, why? Because you're a sage? And he says, no, because I'm a general. I'm like, I don't get what that means.
Understand the layers, but okay.
Yeah, cool. Good job. Xaden, like, wraps him in his shadows. And I'm still going to call him the sage, because that's what we've been calling him. So the sage just says that Xaden's turning is the only way to save her. And Xaden can feel down his bond that she's dying, and that it's intentional. Like, this is the moment where she's putting her power into the stone, and, like, I'm going to sacrifice myself. And we're like, of course, this is what he's feeling. And then the sage says when Xaden falls, he'll walk over his dead body and he'll find her and he'll wrap his hands around her, I think he says like delicate neck or skinny neck or something, and drain her. And he like delves into Scale's power some more, but he has nothing left. And he can't let the sage get to Violet. And he's still on his hands and knees, and the slush under his hands melt, and he can feel the steady flow of power beneath him. And Sigale shrieks at him, "You cannot, I chose you." And he thinks, but Violet chose me too, and he reaches for it.
But I don't understand, like, I just don't understand how he thinks this is going to help Violet.
I don't know. I guess if he kills the sage, he can go back and, like, stop her from killing herself. Not go back in time, but, like, he can be done with this fight and go to her.
I guess. It's just, it seems like a very weak reason to turn.
Yeah, I feel like they could have orchestrated something better. Yeah, I don't really get it either. But he made a choice. And, like, I think there's a lot of manipulation here from the sage, too. Like, I feel like there's, like, months of nightmares and, like, five full months of nightmares that we didn't get. Because it seems like she only had the nightmares when he was in bed with her. So, like, he probably had them every single night.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some more shit there. But anyway, then Xaden shoots up in bed, and we're like, was that all a nightmare? We're like, what the fuck? But Violet is next to him, and she's sleeping, and he thinks she's so fucking beautiful, he can barely breathe. And he almost lost her. So we're like, oh, this is after. This did actually happen. And he runs his hand along her, like, tear-stained cheek, and he thinks, like, she lost her mother today. And he thinks, like, he's about to become the biggest cause of her pain. So we're like, great. He did turn. It wasn't just a dream. So he whispers he loves her, and then he gets up, and he goes to the tunnels of Basgiath, because that's where they still are. And he doesn't reach for Sigale, because she's been silent to him since the battle. And I'm like, what does that mean? That makes me sad. But,
like, also, I'd love to know, like, and I think I might have briefly mentioned it when we talked about, like, Jack Barlow being Venin. Like, I'd love to know, like, what he has done to his connection with Scale. Like, can he still use the shadows, the intentions, like, are his signets...
Yeah, he can still use his shadows.
He can?
Because he uses them now. Yeah.
Okay. Because, like...
But still, I'm like...
What does this mean for him and his bond with Scale? Does it mean anything?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It kind of also just makes me wonder if, like, did humans just used to, like, take power and then not have this dependency on, like, if their dragon died, they died? Like, if Liam had have just, like, taken power from the ground, he could have lived. And, like, if you can control this, if you can live with it, wouldn't that be better? Like, is this really... I know, like, they're evil, they're the bad guys, but, like, is that just because they're greedy for more power, or is it actually something in them? We don't know. But anyway, Sigale's not talking to him. And, like, I hope that...
She gets over it?
They, like... Yeah, and I feel like she will, because she did tell Violet to, like, be careful what she says to him. Like, she's still protective of him. So, like, I feel like she's just pissed. Yeah. But she still loves him, is how I'm hoping it goes. And, like, obviously, like, Violet just got into bed with him, and he's a Venin. Which is just, like, okay. Like, I guess
he's still him.
Yeah, I guess.
He's not automatically evil.
I know, it just seems interesting that none of the Venin that exist aren't, like, are there Venin that are just, like, on the outside just, like, picking flowers and, like, not part of this war? Like, are we gonna get something about that? Because, like, it just feels like some of them shouldn't be evil if we're... Anyway. Too much. So he's walking down the passageways, and he passes the infirmary where they waited for hours for Sawyer to come out of surgery. So we get that Sawyer is still alive. he passes by a guard, but he now has increased shadows since he took power from the ground.
Oh.
Okay? I don't know how long that's going to last.
Also, can I just say, though, so, like, Sawyer is still alive. Do you think, like, menders such as Brennan could regrow a leg?
No, because when Violet landed, she was, like, yelling out for help, and she was like, I need a healer because a mender can't fix this. She thought those words. I'm assuming they can't just, like, Frankenstein.
They can bring someone back from the dead, but they can't grow a limb? Lame.
But they didn't bring him back from the dead.
They brought her essentially back from the dead. Brennan, like, she was almost dead.
Oh, Brennan did, yeah. Yeah, but she's the main character.
I guess.
So yeah. His shadows are increased. He's able to, like, sneak by people. No one can see him. And then he looks through the cell that Violet used to be in, and Jack Barlow was in there. And Jack is just like, are you here to dose me? He's like, I didn't think it would be till tomorrow morning. And Xaden's just like, what's the cure? And he threatens then to put, like, Jack in the chest where, like, he's like, I'm going to get whatever the name of the chest is that makes you float in the middle of nothing.
Oh, right.
He says, I'm going to suspend you until you're mummified. And Jack just says, like, cures are for diseases. What they have is power, and there's no cure, and you can't give back what is taken. You'll only hunger for more. And Xaden says he'd rather die than become one of them. But he feels the draw of the power. And Jack says he was trying to be the hero, but now he'll be the villain, especially in her story. And then Jack says, and I quote, welcome to our fucked up family. Guess we're brothers now. And that's the end of the fucking book. And I'm like, we're ending the book on a Jack Barlow quote?
I hate it.
Me too. So what did you think of the book?
It's good. I was a little bit desensitized to the ending because, like, the big spoiler I already knew was that Xaden turns Venom. Not as emotional as, you know.
Empire of Storm.
Well, that's the thing, I guess. I don't know, like, again, maybe it's just, like, the fact that I sort of already knew what was going to happen. But, like, everybody being like, oh my god, this is... I am shook. I am amazed. I can't believe it. I also feel like it wasn't entirely, like... Yes, we have this cliffhanger of Xaden being a Venom. However, I like that she added in the little tidbit of him getting up from them sleeping in bed together. Because, like, yeah, you're leaving us on a cliffhanger about his well-being, but the state of his romance, his love life, is secure, I'll say with quotes. So, like, it's not...
like, I doubt they had sex, but they slept next to each other.
But, like, you know what I mean? It's like, we sort of have this security that, like,
they're gonna work on it.
They're gonna work it out, right? Like, they're not at odds at the end of the book. Or, like, nobody's kidnapped, you know...
Well, we fucking hope. Like, the next book is probably going to start with her pissed at him again.
God, it feels like that's their MO.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah. So, like, that's what I mean. It's sort of like, I'm glad, like, to me, honestly, the most important bit is, as unfortunate as it is the state of their relationship, right? So the fact that we left them in a decent place despite him being a Venom has settled me.
Yeah.
I'm not as fair. Like, oh my god, I need the next book. Like, yeah, I want the next book, but, like, I'm not like, oh my god, I'm not gonna die.
Yeah. I think that I'm just, like, overwhelmed by the thought of 3 books. Mm-hmm. Like, this was only 2 books.
A lot happens.
There's double that. There's 1.5 times how many books there are now still to come out.
Yeah.
But I guess one good thing is it's going to be really fucking hard to kill Xaden now.
Which is a good thing.
Even if their dragons die. Yeah, even if their dragons die, he's not going to die.
I wonder if they're going to, like, tell everybody.
Yeah, because
they said that the red rings fade, right?
Exactly.
So...
Exactly. So if he doesn't use the power,
It's no issues.
Yeah. And also, like, if he wakes up tomorrow, he can easily just be like, I'm so tired, couldn't sleep, battle. And people would be like, makes sense. That's why your eyes are red.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first time I read this book, I just finished the end of it all in one go. And her mother dying and specifically saying that she was going to get to see him now broke my absolute heart, and I just cried the entire rest of the reading of the book after that.
I get
it. Because,
yeah,
like, after losing my partner a few years ago, it just, like, hit me very hard. So that, like, any books with stuff like that just really get me right in the heart. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited for the next book, but, like, it wasn't that cliffhangery to me. So, like, I'm content.
Yeah, and, like, obviously 3 books left, they're gonna do something to save him.
God,
like,
yes.
This whole book, they were trying to find a cure. Nolan was trying to find a cure. He also said, there's no cure, but there is control. So, like, it kind of reminds me of the Mark of Cain in Supernatural.
Which does get solved, I just don't remember how.
He gives it to the darkness.
It was the darkness.
Chick that starts as a baby and then is sexy and in love with him. So hopefully that doesn't happen in this. Because that would be... I don't need another woman to come in between him and Violet.
No.
But yeah, so I think that's it for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share any of your thoughts on anything you heard in any of our episodes, on this book, or anything else, and if you have any book suggestions, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com or on Instagram or Facebook at coffeeandcoread and coffee.coread on TikTok.
So next week we're going to be doing a little, I guess, a sort of a, not an unknown, but a little known book. It's not super popular, called The Night...
But it's Christmassy.
The Nightmare Before Christmas by Sarah Rask. So we're going to be reading chapters 1 to 5. So we go from reading like 20 chapters a week to 5. It's great. Yeah.
For Christmas.
So make sure to follow along. And if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on the next page.